What's up everyone, how are you all? Toaded, we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto met a beautiful time traveler who claimed she was his future wife? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. I really hope this works. Naruto Uzumaki took a deep breath and exhaled. The battle against Kagaya Otsutsuki had just gone from bad to worse. Sasuke, his best friend and brother in all but blood, was gone. He knew this to be the case thanks to them sharing the two halves of the sage's chakra. Unfortunately, this also meant the rescue mission to locate and retrieve him was also unsuccessful. It also meant that Sakura and Obito were now lost as well, and the Uchiha was already weakened to begin with. The light-colored, sun-like mark on his right palm was all but useless to him now. Oh, it would still allow him to fight against Kagaya, but never defeat her. It would now serve as a taunting reminder of how close victory once was, and if he couldn't attain victory, then that meant everyone trapped within the infinite Tsukuyomi was doomed. It has to. Kurama chimed in. Do you recall our previous conversation? The Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox nodded. How could he forget? Flashback. Naruto was not in a very good mood at the moment, and he had every right to be. Not only had he just separated the Kyuubi from its chakra, giving himself a huge power boost, but he was even able to meet his mother in the process, who, if it wasn't for, he may not have won against the fox. Their time together wasn't very long, but he learned all sorts of things from her. Like what happened on the night he was born, his Uzumaki heritage, and how she and his father had met. Meeting his mother, listening to her story, hearing her tell him she loves him, by all accounts, it was one of the happiest moments of his life. Finally, the answers he'd been craving for all his life were his, but none of it mattered anymore. Why? Because he was lied to. While he was training with Killer Bee to get that huge power boost of his under control, while at the same time cataloging all of the animals on the island, he felt someone else use the Kyuubi's chakra. Deciding to investigate, he entered Sage mode, and was shocked to learn that a war was raging on around him. Those who were on the island with him had kept this a secret from him. He didn't even know how long the fighting had been going on for until someone informed him, and that someone just happened to be the fox. 3 days. For 3 days and 2 nights, his friends, among the many, had been fighting and dying, all for him, and Killer Bee had the fox, now known to him as Kurama, not asked to meet with him right now. He would have left the island long ago to help. It was still odd referring to the fox with his name, but like everything else in his life up to this point in time, he'd adapt. And honestly, the only reason Kurama had even given him his name is because they had come to an understanding. The giant fox explained it to him plainly. He would rather still be sealed inside of him than be in the hands of an Uchiha, since he knew from experience that only someone with that clan's cursed eyes could collect and control the other Biju, seeing as there were no others alive today with the means of doing the same. To show just how serious he was about this, not only had he given him his true name, which Kurama said he's guarded very closely over his life, but he was also going to cooperate with him when it came time to use his chakra. The time when they fought for control of his chakra was in the past, and before he realized just how bad things had become. To Kurama, this was but a small price to pay for what freedom he had so he could remain out of reach of the Uchiha madman. Naruto eyed Kurama. What did you want to talk about? He was hoping this conversation was kept short. His friends were still out there after all. The giant fox remained silent for a few solid seconds, contemplating if what he was about to share with his host was a good idea or not. I may know of a way that will allow us a chance to stop this war from happening. In the end, he decided to proceed forward with it. The blonde exploded, as was expected. What? Why didn't you tell me this sooner? He questioned furiously. You know, before people started dying. Not appreciating the accusatory tone being directed at him, Kurama responded in kind. Silence, he roared. I could have easily just kept this information to myself. The only reason I'm even bothering to share it with you is because we have an understanding. After taking a few seconds to recompose himself, the fox spoke once more. The information I know is meant to be used as a last resort, he added. I know you, Naruto Uzumaki. You would not have hesitated to use the information that I've shared with you the second one of your friends died. Naruto's jaw flexed. He couldn't deny that claim. It just wasn't in his nature to allow someone, let alone someone precious to him, to die if he could have done something, anything, to save them. It seems you've inherited your mother's selective hearing as well. Hey, The fox ignored him. Do you not recall the first thing I just said to you? Though he was still miffed about the jab at his mother, Naruto sat down, and took a thinking pose. His eyes widened all of a sudden, and he looked up at Kurama. You said you had a way to stop this war from happening. How? Kurama grinned widely, showing off his canines. By traveling to the past, he answered, before he turned serious. You must understand, Naruto. Knowledge of this sort is forbidden for a reason. The consequences of this knowledge will not only affect you and I, but everyone. Not to mention the fact that if someone with less than noble intentions gained this knowledge, then things would just go from bad to worse. The blonde nodded. He may not understand a lot of things, but he could understand just how serious Kurama was about this. What would the consequences be? The nine-tailed fox did not answer immediately. The truth is, even he didn't know. It can be a wide array of things. The point I'm trying to make here is this: one does not simply tamper with the laws of nature, and expect to remain unscathed. Naruto frowned as Kurama shrugged off his question. Oh, he gave him an answer, yet at the same time he didn't. This was something that would have to be talked about later on. For now, however, he would move on. There were more important at stake. I'm guessing this information of yours is a technique, right? The fox nodded. How do I use it? The same way any other is used, he replied. Naruto nodded, glad it was something he was familiar with, even if he didn't use hand seals all that often. The only thing is, it's going to be the most hand seals you've ever used in your life. Okay, anything else I need to know? Kurama sighed. His container just didn't seem to understand the gravity of what he was explaining to him. Then again, this was Naruto he was dealing with, so it shouldn't come as a surprise. It's going to take nearly all of our chakra combined to achieve the desired result, he replied. And no matter what, never lose focus. This technique will require every ounce of your concentration. The son of Minato and Kushina nodded. Can I ask you something? Kurama nodded, giving him the go-ahead. How do you even know a technique like this? The fox looked up at the ceiling behind his new seal of the place he called home wistfully. I've lived a very long time, and in that time, I've traveled these lands far and wide. He began, and in those travels, I've come across many things, one of which happened to be this technique. This wasn't entirely true. Yes, he's lived a very long time, and seen many things, but this technique was not one of them. He came across this technique when his father first sent him to live in a temple in the land the humans now called the Land of Fire. It was to separate him from humanity, protecting him from them, and vice versa. It was inside of the temple that he noticed the writing on the wall, and soon came to understand what it meant. I see. So how far back are we looking at here? Hard to say, but with our chakra combined, I give us an estimation of say at least a few months. Hearing that answer honestly threw Naruto for a loop for a brief second. That's it? He would have thought with all of the chakra between the two of them it'd be more. Still, a few months was better than nothing. Maybe he'd even get lucky, and have a chance to save Ero Sennin, or anyone else who died between then and now. Kurama shrugged. It doesn't matter how much chakra you or I have. Time is an inherent force. It's going to push back against anything attempting to disrupt its natural flow. We'd be lucky to receive more than 2 months. Not one to dwell on things for long, Naruto nodded and moved on. How long will it take to learn this technique? Years. We don't have that kind of time. The fox nodded. I know. That's why you're receiving the advanced course, he explained. I want you to make as many shadow clones as you can. Ordered Kurama. To the point that you feel low on chakra. Crossing his fingers, the blonde did as instructed, creating as many clones as he could muster. How long do you think this is going to take? If we work non-stop with few breaks in between, then maybe a day and a half at the shortest. He answered, giving an honest estimation. 2 to 3 days at the longest, maybe. Everyone fighting doesn't have that sort of time, said Naruto. We better get to work. Flashback end. Kurama nodded. Good. Remember, don't lose focus. Naruto took a deep breath and exhaled. He could do this. Creating as many clones as he could in his new form to distract Kagaya, he began to gather and focus his chakra while simultaneously going through the hand seals necessary as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, while the pressure to finish was already high, it had just increased 100-fold. It hadn't even been a minute before bad news was relayed to him. Prior to being destroyed, one of his clones overheard Black Zetsu informing his mother that he was up to something. Damn it, I just need a few more seconds. He was almost done. His eyes widened a fraction when a small tear in the open space in front of him suddenly opened, and from the darkness of another dimension emerged a hand with a bone attached to it. He knew what this was, and what it would do to him if it hit. It felt like an eternity watching as certain death approached him head-on, and even longer still as he watched the last person still alive that he cared about sacrifice themselves for him. Kakashi took the blow meant for him. No time to wonder how the man had gotten there. He grit his teeth and steeled his emotions, about to do one of the hardest things he's ever had to do in his life. Thank you. He thanked the one-eyed man for stepping in front of him and saving his life. I promise I'll save you and everyone else. Kakashi gave him an eye smile. I know you will. He turned to Ash. Having just barely managed to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to break, he finished the last seal and activated the technique. Toki no Aku. Saishu Nenrei. Before anything could happen, however, Kaguya fully emerged before him, and wrapped her hand around his throat. Not wanting to take her back with him, since it would defeat the whole purpose, and make Kakashi's sacrifice in vain, he tried to force her to release him. One hand was trying to crush the wrist around his throat while the other was firmly holding onto one of her horns. Pain suddenly racked his entire body, and he knew that this had to be the technique finally activating. With one final spurt, he used every ounce of strength still left in his tired body, and broke off her horn, causing her to scream in pain, and forcing her to release him just as the technique fully kicked in. His vision began to become blurry before a creeping darkness began to fill in the world around him. The last thing he saw was the face of an enraged Kaguya bearing down on him, reaching for him, then nothing. Wake up, Naruto. The blonde's eyes snapped open at the call of his name, and immediately wished he was unconscious again. His entire body was in an unbelievable amount of pain. It felt like he was being torn apart in different directions. The extraction by Madara earlier didn't hurt this much. How is he still alive? It's probably thanks to being in Uzumaki and to Kurama. After taking a few seconds to allow the pain to recede a bit, and regain control of his breathing, he finally took notice of the void of darkness surrounding them, and of the fact that Kurama was outside of the seal. I'm guessing by where we are, and how you're outside the seal, the technique worked. The giant fox nodded, agreeing with his Jinchuriki's assessment, and then grunted in pain. What's wrong? I can feel something pulling on my chakra in two different directions. So I'm guessing that's your consequence. Kurama nodded with another grunt. Most likely. Naruto suddenly began to spasm as more pain shot throughout his body. The fox could only look on, hoping whatever it was that was happening to his container passed. It did, eventually, and the blonde calmed down, though he now appeared much more haggard. Is forcing me to bear unbelievable amounts of pain my consequence, fox? The nine-tailed fox frowned. Possibly. They were traveling to the past after all. Their bodies had to adjust to the time frame they were forcing themselves into. Then again, it could be something else entirely for all he knew. Time travel was tricky like that. What I do know, however, is that you're beginning to forget. Naruto sent his partner a confused glance. Forget? Forget what? Don't worry about it. He'd just be wasting his breath. Arg. Kurama grunted in pain once more as he felt the pull beginning to become much stronger. Seeing as his time was becoming very limited by the second, he decided to get this next part over with. He gently placed his hand atop of Naruto's head. What are you doing? Making an investment. His giant hand briefly glowed for a few seconds before dying down. You'll see the benefit of what I just did for you one day. If Naruto's parents could do this, then so could he, though what he decided to leave behind was different compared to them. Kurama was taking no chances this second time around. They had to win. Not really understanding what he meant, the blonde just went with it. He then watched as the giant fox placed something around his neck. It was a red thread, most likely his fur, and attached to it was a piece of paper. What's this? Inquired Naruto, fiddling with the paper between his fingers. Consider it a gift. Now very curious as to what it said, he opened it. It had his name written on it, but not the one he was accustomed to. Naruto Namikaze. He looked at the fox. Why not Uzumaki? Sure, he was happy to finally know who his dad was, but he didn't want the man's name. He was an Uzumaki at his core. Because depending on how far back we actually travel, some won't hesitate to kill an Uzumaki. He didn't say it, but Kurama knew something was wrong since they hadn't ended up in the past yet, which could only mean they were traveling farther back than originally thought. If he was correct about his theory, then the surname of Namikaze should have no meaning to anyone yet. Then again, no one would exactly mistake him for an Uzumaki either, but he would rather not take that chance since a talented sensor could differentiate a person's chakra, and which clan it belonged to if they were given incentive to do so. That did beg the question, however. Just how far back were they going, and how? Yes, he saw Kaguya reach for Naruto, but she didn't make contact, did she? He was inclined to believe no, since he hadn't seen her in this void he and his container shared. His thoughts on the matter were interrupted. Thanks for looking out for me. The giant fox gave him a microscopic nod in return. He would have never done something like this in the past, but things had never gotten this bad before. So, part of it was done out of necessity, and the other is because he's come to like, and respect, his container, which only one other person can ever claim to have accomplished. He noticed the blonde's eyes slowly starting to close shut, and knew it was only a matter of time until he disappeared from this place, and ended up in the past of their new home. I see you finally used the knowledge of the technique I created many, many years ago. Kurama was content to just let himself fade from this plane of existence when his time came, but now it was different. He recognized the voice that had just spoken. Looking to his left, where Naruto was, he spotted his old man. Of course it was you who created it. It made perfect sense, all things considered. Not only did Kaguya and Black Zetsu not know what they were up to, but it was also his father who had sent him to that specific temple all those years ago. Plus, this was the man who held the most intricate knowledge of chakra in the world, so it was not out of the realm of possibility that he could create such a technique, no doubt to use in case his first option failed. He shook his head. None of that mattered anymore. What did matter, however, was the question he had for his old man. Why are you here? While he was happy to see one of the only two people he cared about, present circumstances notwithstanding, the old man wouldn't be here for no reason. Choosing to remain silent, Hagoromo approached the unconscious blonde, and just like Kurama had done seconds ago, he placed his hand atop young Naruto's head. It remained there for a few seconds before a dim hue of chakra came and went. What did you do? The old sage merely smiled. I simply gave Naruto a gift, though it was more from his mother than I, he replied. It will undoubtedly help him in the times to come. Taking a few seconds to process the significance of the information, Kurama stared straight into his old man's eyes. You know where we're heading. This was the only logical answer that came to him, as he could think of no other reason as to why the old sage would deliver on a request from a dead woman in the Pure Land, and no doubt breaking all sorts of rules in the process. Hagoromo did not answer. Fine, don't answer that, but answer me this. Can Naruto defeat Kaguya with this second chance? The sage of six paths inhaled and exhaled. Alone he will fail, no matter how powerful he becomes in his new life. Then how? Once more, Hagoromo did not answer. Before Kurama could attempt to question his creator once more, he began losing consciousness, before fading completely, leaving Hagoromo and Naruto alone. The old sage released a sigh. As much as he would have liked to have given Kurama an answer that would have placated him, he couldn't. He knew no other way of defeating his mother aside from what used to be embedded on the palms of Naruto and Sasuke. The time travel technique was only a means to that end. The ceiling worked the first time with him and his brother Hamura, not so much the second. If it was to work the third time around, then the reincarnations of his sons were going to need the assistance of his other children. The young man before him had brought them together once before, and would need to do so again. Just as he did moments ago, he once more placed his hand atop of Naruto's head, and it glowed dimly for all of a second before fading. The first time he did this was on behalf of the Naruto's mother. This time, however, he was adding some insurance of his own that will no doubt help the young man when the time to fight his mother comes again. Though whether he uses that knowledge is up to him, as it will demand he sacrifice much. Hagoromo smiled sadly at the sleeping young man. Though your presence in the past will be unnatural, and you an anomaly, you will also be the catalyst that forces change, giving the future a chance to survive. Naruto disappeared soon after. With his piece said, Hagoromo followed suit, hoping the blonde would be able to defeat his mother this time around. Land of Fire, October 10th. Far away from the dangers of the outside world, and those that dwelled within, there was a lush and vibrant forest, and within it stood a man. He was out hunting, stalking some prey when it suddenly took off in a direction opposite him. His eyes narrowed. Something had spooked it. Focusing, he tried to listen for anything that may have done so, and that's when he heard a faint sound. Enhancing his hearing with chakra, he heard the sound clear as day. There, just off in the distance, less than 100 meters east of him, someone was crying. Which was odd in and of itself. Because aside from himself and his wife, no one else called this part of the forest home. He'd know if they did thanks to the measures they'd taken. The closest neighbors they had lived many, many miles away from them. Curious as to how a child had penetrated their defenses, he decided to investigate. There wasn't much left in this world that could still surprise him these days, but what laid in front of him certainly came very close. He expected to find a child, which he did, just not an infant boy, and a naked one at that. How the boy had survived out here so long as he did was a mystery to him. Either way, if he didn't do something, and fast, the infant wasn't going to survive for much longer. Biting his thumb, he swiped a small amount of blood across the hidden seal located underneath his left wrist. Out came a scroll, and from that scroll he removed a warm blanket. Acting quickly, he carefully picked up the boy, and gently wrapped it around him, trying to warm him up as best he could. Though this temporary solution would help for the time being, and increase the boy's chances of survival, it would not help stave off the cold once darkness fell around the forest. It seems I'm done hunting for the day. It was time to head home. Sealing his tools away, along with the scroll, he turned in the direction home was, and began walking in said direction only to nearly trip over something on the ground. Fortunately, he wasn't a shinobi in name only, albeit a retired one, and very quickly regained his footing. Once he made sure the boy was fine, he began searching for the offending object that nearly made him take a spill with infant in arm, and his eyes widened when he spotted said object. It was a horn, but unlike any he's ever seen in these forests before. He looked down at the boy in his arms, then at the horn, and at the boy again. He shook his head. Contemplation would have to wait. He needed to return home. Picking up the horn, he sealed it away, and left soon after. After walking for a few miles, the home he and his loving wife had built for themselves years ago came into view, as the dead woman he'd been happily married to for the past 7 years. Seeing her outside didn't come as much of a surprise to him. The infant he'd been traveling with had been spooked by his erratic coughing fits on the way here, and began crying, showing off just how powerful a pair of lungs he had on him. The beautiful blue eyes of his wife had yet to leave him, or the small bundle in his arms. "What do you have there, Akihiko?" It was a rhetorical question. Of course she knew, but regardless of knowing, it still needed to be asked. "You know what it is, Kasumi." His green eyes met her blue. "Why not ask? You really wish to know?" She nodded. "Very well then, how did you come across him?" So began Akihiko's explanation of how he located the infant. She didn't interrupt once, listening to his every word until he was finished. After processing everything she'd been told, she spoke. "And you don't believe this to be a trap?" Akihiko stared at his wife for a few seconds. He could understand where she was coming from, but at the same time, she was allowing her paranoia to influence her. "Even if it is, we'll deal with it when the time comes," he responded. "Besides, you can't tell me he isn't worth the trouble." Wondering just what her husband was on about, the rest of her argument died in her throat as Akihiko unfurled the blanket covering the infant, and she finally got a good look at him. Hair as bright as the sun overhead, eyes as blue as the darkest oceans, and skin so smooth you'd think he was a doll. He was by far the most beautiful thing she'd ever laid her eyes on. Kasumi was unsure of herself when her husband attempted to pass the infant over to her to hold, but the moment he was in her arms, something overcame her, and compelled her to gently start rocking him back and forth in her arms while softly humming him a tune. Off to the side, Akihiko smiled lovingly at his wife. She may be the more rational of the two of them, but there were times when he shined through, like now for instance. Seeing her act like this didn't really surprise him. He always told her how much of a great mother she would be if they ever started a family one day. Was he injured? Her sudden question snapped him out of his thoughts, and he shook his head. "No, I checked him over before arriving," he answered. "I did find something interesting though. 2 things actually. And they are?" Akihiko held up a folded piece of paper. "I found this note attached to a red rope that was around his neck." He hesitated a bit before deciding to go through with the idea of mentioning the other item he had found. This was near him as well. Kasumi's eyes widened when she spotted the object in her husband's hand. It was a horn, but unlike any she had ever seen her husband bring home before. A gnawing feeling of dread was beginning to enter the pit of her stomach. Do you believe it's possible that whatever that horn was attached to is the reason he was alone? It's possible, but until I return to the area, I can't say for certain. She nodded. What does the note say? Nothing much. Just a name. What's the name? Naruto Namikaze. Kasumi peered down at the blonde bundle in her arms. It wasn't all that uncommon to see orphans in their world, especially nowadays, but never as young as the blonde. Or more specifically, with a note informing the world of who he was. His sudden appearance couldn't be a coincidence. Nothing in their world ever is. This baby came into their lives for a reason, though neither she, nor her husband, could fathom what that reason was at the moment. She quelled the rising suspicion she felt the moment she heard Naruto's surname, because she realized something after looking into his innocent eyes. None of it mattered, not where he came from, or why he was thrust into their lives all of a sudden. Neither she nor her husband were about to abandon a baby to the same fate that befalls all children of this era. The healing has to begin somewhere, why not here and now? Namikaze. She sounded it out. Though I've never heard of them, it does have a nice ring to it. Akihiko nodded in agreement. That it does, but more than that. I do believe it solves the issue we were having a debate about the other day. I think it'll take more than you and I changing our surname to fool anyone. She said, looking at what laid atop her and Akihiko's head. Then we change our hair color to match his. He countered. No longer will we be known as Uzumaki, but as Namikaze, and as parents to Naruto Namikaze, heir of the clan. Kasumi could see her husband was very serious about this idea. If we do this, then we'll eventually have to tell him everything. Akihiko nodded. He knew what his wife was getting at. By choosing to walk this path, they were going to willingly create a more difficult, and awkward, situation with Naruto later in the future. Be that as it may, however, it did solve the problem they were currently facing after defecting from their clan after the loss of their family and friends, and their disagreements with the clan elders. I know it's going to be a difficult subject to broach and speak about, but I don't believe it'll change anything between us. He said. If she was the rational part of their duality, then her husband was clearly the optimist. She just stared silently into his eyes for what felt like an eternity before nodding. Very well then. Thus did one become three, beginning the rise of the Namikaze clan. Akihiko released a sigh. He was currently holed up in his private study, working on a project he had begun well over 2 years ago now. Time had flown by, and he found the more he reminisced about the past, the more he wished he could go back and just slow it down. I can't believe it's been 4 years already. It felt like it was only yesterday when their little blonde bundle of joy had entered their lives, and now look at him. Just turned 4 years old a week ago, and already advancing in his training. Long gone were the quaint and quiet days when Naruto was a mute, because once the boy began speaking, you couldn't get him to shut up. It wasn't as bad as it sounded, however. They did in fact learn something about their boy thanks to his incessant talking. The boy was bright, very bright. Once they recognized this, both he and his wife did everything in their power to cultivate his growth. From having simple conversations with him about different topics as often as possible, to playing games, especially those that challenged him to think. Well, as much as a child his age at the time could think anyways. As time went on, and he continued growing into himself, they eventually eased him into a more physical routine. Nothing too strenuous, and anything that was always done under heavy supervision. Aside from that, they had also introduced him to projectile weapons, such as kunai, shuriken, and even senbon. Today was different, however. Today, his wife was going to instruct their son on how to unlock the rest of his chakra. They explained as much of the concept to him as they could in the months leading up to today, and as with any child, Naruto did not understand at first. The more they kept explaining it to him, however, the more he began to grasp the concept, and now here they were. I wonder if they've begun yet? Grip, aim, release. Naruto kept chanting this phrase like a mantra as he threw a few of his kunai at a random practice target. All the while patiently waiting for his mother to arrive so they could begin. Hurry up, mom, or as patiently as a 4-year-old could be. Kasumi smiled warmly at her son from inside of the house when he began to whine. He was similar to his father in that regard, and as with most times, she eventually caved in. What could she say? They were her boys, and she'd do anything for them. Which was a stark contrast to how she was in the beginning, at least in regards to her son. Granted, she had every right to be mistrustful, especially in the times they lived in, and how she grew up, but the fact she had been mistrustful of an infant, one who had barely opened his eyes, left her feeling ashamed of herself. A shame she hadn't quite gotten rid of yet, but was doing everything in her power to do so for the past few years. Finishing up with the dishes, she decided to make a detour and check up on her husband before heading outside to teach her son. Reason being because her husband was sick, had been for years now after getting nicked by a poisoned weapon from the land of wind. Fortunately and thankfully, since it was only a scratch, he lived. Unfortunately, the poison was lethal, even in a minor dosage. So while not an immediate death, it was a slow one. It didn't stop him from doing what he wanted or needed to do, not entirely at least, but he had to be very careful not to push himself too hard. Walking towards their bedroom, she gently pushed the door open, took a peek inside, and sighed. Her husband wasn't in bed. Closing the door shut, she began walking towards the back of the house, where Akihiko had built his study. Knock, knock. There was a moment of silence before she received a response. Come in. Opening the door to the small room, Kasumi did not enter, choosing to remain at the entrance, leveling her husband with a look. You were in here all day yesterday. You should be resting today. Akihiko couldn't hide the grimace on his face when he noticed the look his wife was sending him, but had somehow managed to look apologetic despite it. I know, and I'm sorry. He said, the last thing I want to do is put you in the position you're currently in, but I'm so close to finishing this project, I can feel it. She knew how much this project meant to him, her as well, since it was tied directly to their son, but at the same time, he still needed to rest. Because it wouldn't do him, or anyone for that matter, any good if he were to collapse due to exhaustion. Just please get some rest when you're done, for me, okay? The former Uzumaki man could only nod. How could he not? Sometimes, it just wasn't fair how his wife could turn a situation to her favor with but a few words, while at the same time making him feel like he was betraying her if he didn't follow through. He sighed. Even after being married for years now, he still didn't fully understand his wife. Such was the married life he supposed. I'm going to be right outside. So if you need something, don't hesitate to give me a call. With her piece said, she entered, gave him a kiss on the cheek, and left. A very large grin began to spread over Naruto's face the moment he heard the front door to the house open, and his mother walked out. It was finally time to get started. Sorry I'm late. Are you ready to begin? You bet I am. He nodded excitedly. Can I ask a question first though? She nodded. Of course you can. Your father and I have repeatedly told you this, but never be afraid to ask questions, or question something you don't agree with. Even if it comes from the two of you? Naruto had always wanted to know the answer to this question. Ever since his parents first told him to question things, it had always been on his mind, and now seemed like the perfect time to do so since his mother brought it up. Kasumi paused for a brief second as she pursed her lips in thought before giving her child an answer she felt satisfactory with. Yes and no. I want you to listen to what your father and I say, but at the same time, we also want you to think for yourself, to interpret what we teach you, and form your own thoughts and ideals. Because ours won't always necessarily be yours. She explained. Does that make sense to you? The younger blonde gave her an iffy motion. She merely smiled as she gently rubbed the top of his head. I'm sure you'll understand what I mean. You're older. Now, what's your question? Why do I need to unlock my chakra a second time? While it's true everyone is born with their chakra already unlocked, how else would we be standing here? That's but a mere portion of it. She said, what we're going to do today is unlock the rest of it. Understand? Her son nodded. Good. Now I want you to do as I do, and try and get into a meditative position, like so. Sitting down, Kasumi crossed her legs, and placed one hand atop the other. Once she felt comfortable with her positioning, she shifted her attention to her son, and her eyes widened a bit in surprise. Not only was her son already in a meditative position, but he appeared absolutely natural in it, far more than she did at least. How did you do that? Naruto shrugged. I don't know. Once I saw what you were doing, my body just began moving on its own, and the next thing I know I'm on the ground. He explained. How odd, she thought. Deciding to speak more with him on this revelation later, and consult with her husband, she continued in her instruction. Okay, now that we're in position, I want you to try and block out everything around you except for my voice as I'm going to guide you as you search deep within yourself. Taking a deep breath, Naruto exhaled. Making an attempt to block out everything except her voice, the younger blonde closed his eyes in concentration, and began searching within himself. Though there was a question lingering at the forefront of his mind. How will I know when I find it? You'll know. A small frown marred his youthful face. That response was not what he had been expecting, but nonetheless, he was determined to succeed and continued searching. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he searched, he still couldn't locate the source. It was very frustrating to say the least. Kasumi calmly watched her son work, noting his frustration. While she did say she was going to guide him, it was only a ruse on her part, because as much as she wished to help him, this was something her son needed to do himself. Once he located it, however, then, and only then, would she guide him on how to rein it in. A few minutes had passed by before she released a breath. "Don't worry if you can't locate it on your first attempt," she said, piercing his concentration. "Not everyone is the same. Some find it immediately, others take a bit more time." Naruto mentally scowled when hearing that. Taking that as a personal challenge, he began to search even deeper within himself. As he continued traveling further down the rabbit hole, he suddenly came upon a warm sensation. It felt really nice. This is it. It was just as his mother said. This was his chakra. He knew it instinctively. He pulled. It didn't budge, and refused to budge even after he pulled harder. His frustration had reached its boiling point, and he knew it was only a matter of time before he could do this no longer. So it was with one final heave that he pulled once more, and felt it finally give way. The longer she watched her son struggle, the more she debated on allowing him to continue on for a few minutes longer, or allow him to rest, so he could try again later. The decision was taken out of her hands when pure raw chakra exploded outward from within her son. She knew what to expect when unlocking a person's chakra, having experienced it many a time when she and her husband still resided on Uzu no Kuni, but what was occurring before her very eyes was something else entirely. Her son's chakra was immense, and suffocating, even compared to a full-grown Uzumaki. Were she any less of a kunoichi, she would have crumbled under its massive weight. Seeing as she didn't have to worry about the huge surge of chakra being felt by anyone outside of their home, as she and her husband had multiple seals deployed, she calmly walked towards her son. She placed her hand atop his head and spoke. "Listen to my voice, Naruto. You need to calm down and slowly recall all of your chakra." "I don't know how." He was beginning to panic. "Think of yourself as an empty bottle," she suggested. "Just gather everything that's leaking outside of you back inside, and seal it shut." Sometimes it helped to have a visual to work with. A bead of sweat traveled down Naruto's furrowed brow as he began to concentrate harder. The image of an empty bottle soon came to mind, and he slowly began to gather the majority of his chakra until he began doing it subconsciously. "Are you okay?" Opening his eyes, he found himself peering into his mother's eyes and nodded. "I'm fine, but why did something like that happen? Most children your age don't have reserves of chakra anywhere near that of what you just displayed, so I'd wager that's why." She explained. "Sorry about that," he said, looking down at the ground, thinking he had done something wrong. Kasumi wrapped her slender arms around him. "Never apologize for the gifts you've been given. You were given such large reserves for a reason. What do you think that reason is?" The older woman shook her head and answered honestly. "I don't know, but whatever the reason, I know you'll be able to handle it." She pressed her forehead against his, and remained as such for a few seconds. The two eventually separated. "Feeling better?" He nodded, especially since he had just finished recalling all of his chakra. "Good, because I have something for you." Naruto's eyes lit up, and like all children his age, his previous emotional state was now but a thing of the past. "What is it?" She handed him a scroll. "Use the exercise in there to help control your chakra. Only when you master this technique, and show me firsthand, will I give you the next exercise." The Namikaze heir nodded his head enthusiastically. "I'll learn this one, the next one, and any other you have." Kasumi nodded, wholeheartedly believing her son would do as he proclaimed. Having said her piece, she left her son's side, so he could begin his exercise, and quickly made her way back into the house. She went straight to Akihiko's study, and breathed a sigh of relief when she noticed he was fine. "Are you okay?" He grunted. "Yeah, I am. I was just caught off guard by how large his chakra is." "So was I, but this just confirmed the conclusion we reached about him." Akihiko nodded, sharing his wife's sentiments. "Yeah, that kid is going to change the world one day." They already knew their son was special, but what occurred today went beyond simply being gifted. Today only further cemented their opinion of just how important Naruto was going to be in the future. 3 years later, Land of Fire, April 10th. Just a bit farther now. The soon-to-be 7-year-old blonde was jogging through his family's section of forest at a sedate pace, on his way to gather some food. Though this was the case, his family wasn't exactly hurting for it, far from it actually. His father, though sick, still provided. This was more of him going out and gaining experience. It had been decided one day 2 years ago by his parents that it would be best if he knew how to hunt and cook for himself in the event something occurred in the future. The lesson started off simple enough, simply watching his mother and father use the skills they had acquired and mastered throughout their lives. Once they felt he had grasped enough of what he was to learn did they begin teaching him in earnest. As time went on, and after a number of supervised trial runs of everything he's learned from his mother and father, was he allowed to hunt and cook small game alone. Though he only did so 3 days out of the week. The rest of his time was spent training. Now, normally, he would keep to routine today, and be on his way to check on the traps his father had set up years ago, but he wanted to try something different today. He wanted to fish. He was currently on his way to a river, though he had no fishing pole whatsoever to speak of, which was okay, because he had a foolproof plan. It involved throwing a large rock on top of another large rock that was in the water, and watching as all the fish floated to the surface. He'd seen his father do this years ago when he was training him at a pond near their home. The river itself was about an hour, give or take, away from home, in a clearing more than 50 yards outside of the boundary created by his parents. He caught sight of it one day when he was out hunting by his lonesome, and had veered much too close to said boundary line. He hesitated in crossing the line that day to investigate. Once he felt more comfortable with the idea, and spent numerous days checking, double-checking, and even triple-checking the surrounding area to the best of his abilities, did he finally take a step forward. He knew he was breaking an important rule here, going outside the boundary line, but what his parents didn't know wouldn't hurt them. Besides, even if they did manage to learn the truth, he's positive they'd overlook the fact he broke a rule when he shows them the river, and just how much it could provide for the family. He hoped he was right, or else he was in for it. Made it. Arriving at his destination, he peered into the clear glistening water being hid by the sun overhead, and saw all of the swimming fish down beneath, ready to be caught, though they did not keep his attention for very long, however. There, underneath the surface, something was shining through. He didn't know what it was, but he was going to find out. Removing his clothing, so only his underwear remained, he slowly entered the cold water before diving in head first. Ignoring that sudden chill as he dove straight in, he swam to the bottom and scooped up a handful of dirt. Rising to the surface, he used the current to wash some of it away, and what it revealed was a rock, but unlike any he had ever seen before. It was a beautiful sparkling shade of green, and it was smaller than his fist. Simply mesmerized by its beauty and exotic nature, he forgot all about catching fish, and decided to return home. Land of Fire, April 17th. Here we go again. Naruto was once more out on the prowl, and was once more returning to the river. He had unfinished business there after last week. Thankfully, neither parent had chosen to press him on his choice of hunting location last week, as they knew not all hunts would yield results. They did however question him on why he had chosen not to check on the traps before returning. Instead of giving them an explanation, he showed them. He received a stern lecture and scolding soon after. He absolutely hated lying to his parents, but they couldn't find out what he was doing, not until he could prove how valuable the location was, which is why he was returning, this time with fishing pole in hand. His father had given him his old one after he mentioned he may try to fish after he went by some of their hunting grounds. He arrived, hopefully second time's a charm. And hopefully nothing would distract him this time around from accomplishing his goal. Emerging from his side of the forest, and onto his side of the riverbank, he came to a sudden halt, his eyes wide in shock. It seems he may have been hoping for a bit too much, because standing opposite him on the other side of the river were two people, both girls, one young with dark black hair, the other one older with red hair. He had never come across, let alone seen for that matter, other people. While he was certainly curious about the two, he was also wary of them. His parents had given him the cold hard truth one day, of how the world outside of their home and forest really was. It wasn't a pleasant conversation by any stretch of the imagination, but it was one he needed to hear all the same. His parents told him that if he were to ever meet anyone, rare as it was in their forest, and that person was an adult, then he was to run and hide, and if at all possible, try and alert them. If running was out of the question, then his next course of action was to appear as harmless as possible, and hope that whomever he was facing did not see him as a threat. If neither option was available to him, then he was to fight. His father and mother may not have taught him much in terms of combat yet, but they did teach him how to survive, and that's what he would have to use against his enemy. They never mentioned how he was to deal with other kids, or a teen in this case, so he would just treat them the same as an adult. Unfortunately, putting what his parents taught into practice was a skill he has yet to master. The girl with red hair took a step forward, and now stood in front of the other girl protectively, kunai in hand, and a glare aimed directly at him. If he wasn't rooted in place yet, he certainly was now. He was no stranger to the projectile weapon, but never had he had one been getting ready to be thrown at him with the intent to harm, or kill. While her weapon kept him in place, it was her glare however that truly unnerved him. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" questioned the redhead, her voice cold. Somehow managing to push past his fear, he bit the inside of his lower lip hard enough to draw blood, and slowly felt some of the tension he was feeling dissipate. He would need to thank his father for teaching him this trick, though it was only meant to be used when dealing with predators, few that lived in these forests, that triggered a human survival instinct. The redhead in front of him was a predator through and through. Noticing a slight turn in her wrist, he knew she was getting ready to throw her kunai. He needed to do something quickly, or she'd take his continued silence the wrong way. Seeing his running was no longer an option at this point in time, lest he want a kunai in his back, option 2 was his only choice. The fact she hadn't killed him yet, or outright for that matter, boded well for him. Before he could quickly raise his hands in the air, he stopped himself. Sudden movement like that would no doubt be bad. He calmly raised them instead. "Don't hurt me," he said, his voice carrying to the other side. "My name is Naruto, and I'm just here to catch some food." He waved his fishing pole in hand to accentuate his point. The redhead just stared at him, studying him, trying to discern if he was lying or not, before eventually placing her weapon away. Naruto released a small breath of relief. She had bought his act. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to celebrate his small victory. "I'm going to be watching you, so do yourself a favor, and don't do anything stupid." His brows rose a bit. "She's letting me stay?" Well, he certainly wasn't expecting that. He'd been hoping that if she didn't see him as a threat, she'd let him leave. "What's the matter?" "Start fishing." The blonde opened his mouth to say something, anything, but shut it. Looking directly into her eyes, he realized what she was doing. She was testing him. If he left now, without doing exactly what he said he was here to do, he would only be confirming whatever suspicions she had about him, and be forced to act. Seeing as he didn't want her to do that, he did as he was told. Sitting down on his side of the riverbank, he cast his line into the water. An awkward silence immediately set in, and as difficult as it was for him to keep his eyes on his line, he just couldn't, and kept on sneaking a few glances at the two across from him. The redhead was currently teaching the younger girl something. After a few minutes of silence, and whatever it was they were practicing, the younger girl lost her cool, and snapped. "Arg!" She kicked a few stones into the water, no doubt scaring the fish, and prolonging his stay. She kept on losing concentration due to her hair getting in the way. Unfortunately, she also happened to catch him staring. "What are you looking at?" Naruto's head snapped back down to his line. "Nothing," he mumbled, shaking his head. After a few more terse seconds of silence, he risked another look at the younger girl again, however this time, he locked eyes with the redhead. He quickly looked down. "If you have something to say, then say it," she told him, "because you're distracting my friend." The blonde's jaw tightened a bit, not sure if he should respond or remain silent. "Well, if the two of you would like, I may have an answer to her problem." The older one just looked at him while the younger girl stopped fiddling with her hair, leaving one eye visible, to also look at him. "What is it?" Relief flooded his body as he released the breath he'd been holding. He locked eyes with the redhead once more. "I'm going to reach into my pack, so please don't throw that knife at me." The older girl rolled her eyes. She wasn't going to attack him unprovoked. She wasn't trying to be like the rest of the world. That being said, she wasn't going to lower her guard around the boy either. While she may not be able to sense chakra like other people, she was very observant, and noticed the boy not only had calluses on his hands, but he had very sharp eyes for someone his age, with a wit to match if their earlier introduction was anything to go by. He was subtle in not giving anything away, but the eyes are the window to the soul for a reason. She could see the internal conversation he'd been having with himself on how to act and proceed when he first noticed them across the river. He reminded her of the boy she was to be betrothed to, albeit a bit more mature. She noticed he was done searching, and her trained eyes spotted a small object in his hand, shining as the sun hit it. Her eyes narrowed. What is that? It's too small to be a kunai, and much too big to be a shuriken, unless it's a new design. A senbon needle perhaps? She watched as the blonde tossed the item over to them, and watched as it landed at their feet. Picking it up, she began to inspect it. It was a senbon needle. After a few seconds, her eyes sought out the boy's once more. Where did you get this? He shrugged. I actually found it in the forest one day, and wanted to use it to hunt, mostly to skin any prey that I caught. He explained. The redhead nodded slowly, finding his explanation solid, since it was very likely all sorts of projectile weapons were littered throughout this forest due to all the fighting, be it from the past or present. There were just a few things that didn't quite add up. I find it hard to believe you can skin anything with this sort of weapon. She pointed out. And why does this so-called weapon of yours have a beautiful green rock on top of it, and how did you get it so smooth? Naruto nearly had a heart attack when he heard her calling him out on his lie. He was happy she had bought the idea of him having found it out here, when in reality it was one of his own, but now he had to come up with something to satisfy her other questions, and the lie he had been called out on. It's for precise skinning. One look back at her said she didn't buy that excuse. He sighed. Okay, it's not a weapon, but a tool for catching fish. The reason it has the green rock on top is to attract fish to it, but also because it makes it look nicer, since it's a gift. As for how it's so smooth, well, I'm sure it was underwater for a very long time. He answered. The redhead nodded slowly once more. Who is it a gift for? My father. At the mention of his father, the older teen pounced. And what exactly does your father do? Naruto replied without delay. He's a hunter, but he's sick. That's why I'm out here, to help him. He explained. No point in telling them how exactly the man got sick. The gift is meant to cheer him up. You see, he can't do a whole lot anymore, but fishing is one of the few things he still can do. The redhead searched his eyes, looking for any form of deceit. His answer, while to the point, was also short, and while she believed what he said, she couldn't quite get rid of this nagging feeling in the back of her head in regards to it. She nodded to herself. More questioning was needed. I see. Your father must be quite the teacher if he can train a 5-year-old? 6 actually. A 6-year-old to hunt and survive on his own. While Naruto wanted to acknowledge his mother, since it was disrespectful not to acknowledge her efforts in his training, or the skills she gained and mastered over the years, he kept his mouth shut. It was best if the redhead in front of him believed it was only he and his father out here. He returned to the topic at hand and replied. My father drilled it into me that a person must know how to do many things in order to survival in our world, no matter the age. Your father is a smart and wise man. For the first time since meeting each other, Naruto wore a smile. It was nice hearing others say what he already knew. He is, he said. Anyways, you can use that lure as a hairpin for her. He looked at the younger girl. Never been used by the way, just in case you were wondering. The redhead stared at the hairpin, and then at her younger friend, who shrugged. I'll follow your lead, said the younger girl. The older teen nodded and turned to face the blonde. What about your father? Naruto shrugged. I'll just get him something else. Besides, if it helped him get out of the situation, then he's positive his father won't mind. I see. Thank you then. You're welcome. He watched as the older girl attempted to fix the younger one's hair. She couldn't quite get all of the hair up with the pin, only half, which left one side of the younger girl's face exposed. Before the redhead could attempt to adjust it, he decided to chime in. I like that look, he said, staring at the younger girl. It suits you. Oh, thank you, muttered the younger girl bashfully at the compliment. The redhead smiled at her friend, and then looked at the blonde. Naruto's eyes widened when the redhead looked at him. I like your hair too, he added very quickly. It's beautiful. Red is one of my favorite colors. The older girl wore an amused smile on her face. Thank you for the compliment. Rare as it was, since no one aside from her father ever complimented her hair. It felt nice. Looking up at the sky, she noted the sun was now a bit behind them. "It's about time we head back," she told her young friend. The blonde frowned. "Why are you leaving so early?" He was starting to enjoy their company, even if they were still complete strangers. "Dusk won't settle in for 2 more hours. We've actually been practicing since early in the morning," replied the redhead. "If we don't return soon, then our families will come looking for us, and as someone who helped us, I don't want any harm to befall you, or your family." Naruto wasn't sure just how it was that he had helped her, but nonetheless, he was grateful for her thoughtfulness, though there was something he wanted to know before they left. "Before you leave, can I know the names of my 2 new friends?" "Friends?" thought the redhead. She was pretty positive a small afternoon together didn't qualify them as friends. Turning around to address the blonde, she stared straight ahead into his blue eyes, and couldn't help herself, she smiled. The boy in front of her was bouncing around on the balls of his feet. He was just so innocent, despite the current situation. It was endearing in a way. It also went to show just how little contact he's had with others his age if he considers them 2 strangers, albeit near his age, friends. The redhead remained silent for a few seconds before speaking. "My name is Mito." She saw no harm in telling him. After all, they'd probably never meet again after today. "And my name is Toka." The younger girl followed suit, trusting the judgment of her friend. The 2 females shared one last nod with him before departing to their side of the forest. Naruto could not stop the megawatt grin from tugging on his lips. He had just made friends. And 2 of them. Sure, things had started off rough, but it all turned out okay in the end. And to think he thought today was just going to be another day, oh how wrong he was. 10 months later. Land of Fire, February 13th. Naruto was currently standing in the clearing outside of his home, and staring direction into the eyes of his father. The man mentioned teaching him something today. "I wonder if he's going to add on to what Mom has already taught me." Before his old man joined him outside, he'd been busy practicing his calligraphy, all in the hopes of one day mastering the art known as fuinjutsu. When his mother first introduced him to the art of seals months ago, his eyes lit up. There were just so many possibilities that could be accomplished with this skill. From what he could understand, the only thing a practitioner really needed to have was imagination. His mother told him much more went into it than that, but in essence, he was correct. The world of reality has its limits. The world of imagination is boundless. He quoted his mother. Either way, it made sense his father was out here if he was indeed going to teach him about seals. It was a form of training that didn't require either party to exert much, if any, physical effort, and that was important due to the fact that his father had collapsed last year. His old man had been out hunting small game, but had not returned home at his usual time. Darkness descended upon the forest quickly that day. With their anxiety becoming nearly palpable, he and his mother eventually decided to take matters into their own hands, and ventured into the forest in search of their husband and father. They located him 1.5 miles away from home. His sickness had finally gotten to him. Naruto was still haunted by the feelings and memory of utter helplessness he felt that day, not sure if he'd ever see his father open his eyes again. Thankfully, the man pulled through, but what remained of his days of hunting, or any sort of physically demanding labor, were over. It was now his full-time job to hunt and provide for the family. It was a great deal of responsibility, but he welcomed it with open arms. What really took time for him to adjust to was finding a balance between hunting and training. After some trial and error, he managed to find a routine that suited him. "I'm sorry." Naruto's brows shot up in surprise as he lost concentration on his current thoughts. Whatever it was he expected to come out of his old man's mouth, that was not it. The older man now had his full attention. "For the longest time, I've wanted to stand out here with you and your mother more often," he said. "I wanted to be a part of helping you grow and become a man. Instead, I've had to watch you grown from a distance. Again, I'm so." The Namikaze heir did not allow his father to finish that sentence, and wrapped his arms around the man's waist tightly. His father didn't need to explain himself. He knew how busy the man was with providing and protecting their family. "It's okay. Any time I can spend together with you is more than enough." Akihiko smiled at his son, pulling him closer. "Thanks, son. I really needed to hear that." The 2 of them remained like that for a few more seconds before separating. I may not be able to help you all that much physically, but I can still teach you the theory behind what I do know. Are you going to teach me more fuinjutsu? The older man shook his head. No, your mother has that subject covered. What I plan on teaching you is genjutsu and taijutsu, he revealed. Noticing the confused expression on his son's face, he decided to elaborate. Despite my own massive reserves of chakra, I'm actually very good with illusions. It also helped that it required no physical effort on his part. And the taijutsu? I'm going to instruct on you on the basics, and point out any mistakes you make. Once you have the basics down, will you be ready to start creating your own style, which both your mother and I will help you cultivate and polish? Naruto merely nodded, choosing not to say anything in regards to his father saying he would have to create his own style. He actually already knew a form of taijutsu, though for the life of him he didn't know how. It just came to him one day while he was out training alone, and before he knew it, he was practicing the katas. One thing he did know, however, the style itself was very strong. Hey, Naruto. Would you like to increase your training regimen? I'm always up for pushing myself harder, but how? Before I show you, answer me this. What is the most dangerous tool a human has at their disposal in our world? Naruto thought on this for a few seconds before the answer came to him. Our mind. Akihiko opened his mouth, then shut it. You're correct. The most dangerous tool a human can have in our world is indeed their mind, which is why we have to keep it sharp, but in this instance, however, I was actually looking for another answer. He said, you see, speed is actually the most dangerous tool a human can possess in our world. The span of a few seconds can mean the difference between life and death. The first Namikaze nodded. I want you to remove your shirt, and roll up your pant legs, for a moment. The Uzumaki turned Namikaze man unsealed his ink and brush, and began to draw intricate seals on his son's upper body and legs. Now, I may not be as skilled with fuinjutsu as your mother, but I'm no slouch either. Okay, but what exactly are you applying? Inquired Naruto. Weights, responded Akihiko. Real weights can hurt your developing body, and stunt your growth if we're not careful. With these, however, you can adjust the weight as you see fit. When Naruto heard that, he was now more than happy to receive these. They would undoubtedly help him with his taijutsu training. Though unbeknownst to him, Akihiko was also applying another seal right smack dab in the center of his chest, where many theorized the core of the chakra pathway system lay. Finally, after many years of hard work and sacrifice, his special project was complete. Though he may have told a white lie in regards to his skill with seals when it came to his wife. It's true she was better overall, but she, and even their old clan leader, Ashina, would be hard-pressed to create the specific seal he made. Not because it wasn't known, but because it was tailor-made for him and his on. The seal would all but ensure that his son lived a long life. It would transfer all of his chakra over to Naruto, and convert it so his son could use it as his own. Are you almost done? Asked Naruto. He was very eager to try these weights out. Naruto, what have your mother and I always told you? The natural blonde sighed. That patience is a virtue. Akihiko nodded. That's right, and yes, I'm done. Just give me a second to finish up. He went through a few hand seals. Fuin. Once the seal was activated, Akihiko immediately felt the pull on his own chakra core. He hid the strain on his face well, and managed to direct a small smile at his son. How do you feel? The weights are currently set to 1. The younger blonde moved around a bit, testing his arms and legs. Heavier, but other than that, I feel fine. Good. Now, seeing as we're done with that, it's time to start training. Land of Fire, February 14th. A frown marred Naruto's young face. He was currently standing atop a tree branch overlooking the river from a small distance away. While he was here to catch some fish, another part of him was also hoping to see Mito and Toka once more. He hasn't seen them once since their first meeting, but at the same time, he didn't always go to the river either, so it's entirely possible they could have just missed each other. Anyways, he was hoping today would be different in that regard, and it was, to a varying degree. There were 2 people on the opposite side of the river facing his direction, but they were not girls. They were boys, and they appeared to be around his age, maybe a few years older. And unlike Toka, he could easily see that these 2 were trained. It was all in their wrist movements as they tossed stones across the river. Constantly training with kunai, shuriken, and senbon did that, he should know. A low hum escaped his lips. I wonder how the two of them would stack up against Mito. He shook his head. He was distracting himself with questions he didn't need to have the answers to. He decided to continue watching them for a bit longer before ultimately deciding what to do. After studying the two for a solid couple of minutes, and making note that neither had tried to kill the other yet, he decided it was safe enough to reveal himself. Worst case scenario, he'd escape using one of the techniques his mother had taught him. Taking the long way around, he approached the duo from the same side they were on. So as to not give them any ideas of where he may have come from, he picked up a small stone, and flung it across to the side he was previously on. The sudden movement made the two boys snap their heads in his direction. He waved at the two. Neither boy reciprocated, and it was quickly becoming more awkward the longer it remained silent. Thankfully, the one with the bowl haircut spoke up. Oi, oi, oi. It seems like you know how to toss stones as well. That makes you a rival as well. Naruto slowly released the breath he'd been holding since first deciding to approach the two. He took a gamble, and so far, it looks like it was paying off. Still, he was surprised how quickly one of them seemed to accept him. He couldn't lie though, it felt nice. That being said, he would still need to be careful around them, especially the boy sending both him and the boy with the bowl haircut, wary glances. It was the exact same look Mito had been giving him months ago, though this one felt much less dangerous in comparison. So, what were the two of you doing before I arrived? He asked. If he could change Mito's mind about him, then it should be possible to do the same again. The boy closest to the river, the wary one, finally spoke. Very little, he replied, his eyes still trained on the two like a hawk. I was here by myself, skipping stones, when this one arrived. His eyes traveled to the boy with the bowl haircut. I asked him who he was, he ignored my question, and then began giving me tips on hoes to toss stones. He said, finishing his explanation before looking at the boy with the weird haircut again. So I ask again, who are you? He then looked to the blonde. And who are you? The boy with the bowl haircut decided to answer first. You two can call me Hashirama. Probably best if I don't give out my surname though. The now named Hashirama, and the boy closest to the water, were both looking at him, waiting to see if he would answer. Just as he was about to open his mouth to do so, the blonde closed it. He remained silent for a few seconds before speaking again. How about a wager? If you can get your stone across to the other side, then I'll give you my name. If you can't, however, then you have to do something for me," said Naruto, having no clue where this crazy idea came from. It wasn't exactly the same way he won over Mito and Toka, but if it got him the desired results, who was he to complain? The boy closest to the river narrowed his eyes and peered down at the stone in his hand. It suddenly felt much heavier than before. He looked at the blonde again. "Don't worry, I won't ask for something unreasonable if you can't get it across. Just a simple request." Weighing his options, he decided to take the wager. If he won, then he would gain the name of a youth who had been able to sneak up on him. If he lost, he could always just not come back here. Nodding, he threw his stone. It didn't make it across, and it quickly grew silent. Before the blonde could ask the unnamed boy what he wanted, said boy turned on them and exploded. "You assholes!" yelled the unnamed boy. "You both stood behind me on purpose, didn't you? You're obviously trying to distract me." He pointed at the blonde and Hashirama. "I can't even take a leak if someone is standing near me. That's just how aware of my surroundings I am." Naruto was honestly caught off guard by the sudden rant, and turned to Hashirama, about to ask him if the guy across from them was being serious, but stopped when he saw said boy. He was in the fetal position. "Forgive me," mumbled Hashirama, looking depressed. "No need to get all emotional," said the unnamed boy. "I tend to make excuses when things don't go my way," he explained. Hashirama did a complete 180, and was up and his old self the moment he heard this. "No need to explain. Your ego is just so big that you have a god complex. I can't tell if you're just sensitive, or if you're just being a smart ass," commented the boy closest to the water. He then looked at the blonde. "And since you haven't said anything, you're probably making fun of me. Leave, the both of you. I want to be alone. Not before you honor our deal." The unknown boy released a sigh. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to be my friend." The request caught the other two boys off guard. Hashirama smiled at the blonde. "Can I be friends with you as well?" he asked. The blonde nodded his head vigorously and extended his hand. "I'm Naruto. The two newest friends looked down at the other boy, who sighed. The request wasn't unreasonable. It also helped he actually liked the blonde. Well, at least more than Hashirama anyways, which wasn't all that hard to accomplish. He looked at the two. I'm Madara. Before any more could be said between the three new friends, all of them spotted something floating in the water. It was a body. What in the world? Hashirama ran across the surface of the water to inspect it. Madara narrowed his eyes, suddenly much more alert than before. You're a shinobi. He then looked at Naruto. And you're one as well, aren't you? The blonde chose not to answer, and just remained silent. So the war has finally reached these lands, thought Hashirama. It'd be best if the both of you head on home, he said, his search yielding him no information, aside from what he initially saw upon the body. I should be leaving as well, he muttered. Later, Naruto, Madara. Hashirama disappeared into the forests. Naruto nodded at him, and then looked at Madara. See y'all later, Madara. He left the same way he entered. Yeah, see you later, mumbled Madara. He wasn't so sure about this whole friendship thing anymore, especially now that he knew both of his friends were shinobi. Still, they hadn't attacked him or each other, so he'd give them the benefit of the doubt. He left soon after as well. Home sweet home. The blonde's home came into view just as the sun in the sky lowered beneath the horizon, giving rise to its counterpart. On average, it shouldn't have taken him anywhere near as long as it did to return, but seeing as he was making sure he wasn't followed, his hands were tied on the matter. Also, he went to check on the traps afterwards. Normally, it would have taken him an entire day to check on all of them, and it shouldn't have been at all possible today seeing as he split his time at the river with Hashirama and Madara, but he was able to. It was all thanks to a technique he knew that allowed him to do so. He didn't know how he knew it, as it came to him one day, much like his taijutsu katas, but he was glad it did. It was called the cage bunshin. It was a different type of cloning technique from the one his mother had taught him. For one, the clones were solid, but could still be dispelled if they were hit with enough force. Secondly, and much more importantly in his opinion, whatever these clones learned, so did he. The technique didn't come without its risks though, as he quickly learned. One massive headache later, and he knew to take it easy with how many he created and dispelled at a time. This rule went hand in hand with his training, because despite loving that he could be in so many places at once, learning all sorts of things in a matter of time, nothing beat doing something yourself. The gratification was well worth it. He entered through the front door. I'm home. Welcome home. Kasumi greeted him. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner. So, how did it go out there today? Naruto shrugged. About the same, he responded. I brought home 2 days worth of food though. She nodded, glad to hear that, and made a mental note to place the meat on ice. Did anything exciting happen while you were out? Not really. The lone female hummed. She didn't speak for a few seconds, and the smaller blonde began to sweat a bit. Okay then, go ahead and bathe. Dinner should be ready by the time you get out. Doing as told, Naruto breathed a sigh of relief as soon as he turned the corner. That was way to close a call. He was positive she didn't suspect anything, but he could never be sure with his mother. She just had this knack for knowing when he was hiding something. Speaking on that, he didn't enjoy lying to his mother. Yes, he'd been keeping the fact that he knew techniques neither she nor his father had taught him a secret, same with going past the boundaries they set up, but lying about his friends just felt different compared to the other things, and he didn't know why. Maybe it was because it involved others, not just him and his family, anymore? Either way, he could only hope his new friendships with Madara and Hashirama would be worth it in the end. He was anxious, so anxious in fact that he had hardly gotten any sleep at all. Adrenaline was pushing him past his tiredness. He couldn't wait to meet his friends again. He just hoped they would be there waiting for him. Naruto looked outside of his small window and couldn't see the sun out yet, but looking up in the sky told him it would be out in a few minutes. Seeing as he couldn't hope to fall back to sleep since he was so wound up, he decided to get his usual training routine done and out of the way so he could get over there sooner. Scooting himself closer to the edge of his bed, he got out and quickly made it. He changed out of his night clothes and into his regular gear, grabbed anything he would need and headed outside. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he took a drink of water and sat down, exhausted. He had been working out since the sun had risen in the sky, yet it was still very early in the morning, so much so that he had yet to eat anything. Which is what he was going to do right now. Morning routine done, it was time for some breakfast. Morning. He greeted his mother. Good morning, she replied. Have anything planned for today? Naruto knew she was just making idle chit-chat, but couldn't help but feel there was a motive behind it. I finished my morning routine already. Next I'm going to eat, bathe, rest for 2 hours, and then start on the next phase of my training routine. He listed off his routine. After I'm all done with that, I figure I'll head back out into the forest, he said, sipping his milk. Kumiko raised an eyebrow when he mentioned the forest again. Okay, but please just remember to be extremely careful out there. He smiled at her with a big grin. Always. She gave him a smile of her own and ruffled his hair. Oh, she had just remembered something. Speaking of training, your father and I want you to start learning unarmed combat. Taijutsu? Why? It wasn't like he didn't want to learn it, but he always figured he was too little for it right now. Because there will be times when you will be left with nothing but your arms and legs. I want you to remember this phrase. Always expect the unexpected, never assume anything. Always expect the unexpected, never assume anything. He parroted. She nodded. You never know how skilled the person across from you is. They could seal your chakra or remove your ninja tools, explained his mother. Point is, I want you to be ready for any situation that ever arises in front of you. He nodded, he understood. Finishing his food and dropping his dishes into the water basin, he went for the restroom, cleaned himself, and went for his room. As soon as he spotted his bed, he dropped face first into his pillow. The youngest blonde Namikaze was currently on his way to meet his 2 friends at their spot. He would break into a fit of giddiness whenever he said that, their spot. That meant the 3 of them had a connection. He had already finished his afternoon routine of training with a few of his clones, bathed, and was moving through the canopy. He hadn't really even been that exhausted when he had finished and often found himself wondering why. Even his parents didn't know why. So after a while, he had decided to just drop it for the moment. Recently, well only one day really, he had wondered how strong Madara and Hashirama were. If possible, he would ask for a spar for whoever was willing. A smile spread across his face when he thought about that and sped over to their spot. A giant frown was etched on Naruto's face. Why? His friends had yet to show up. He had thought perhaps he had shown up early due to his excitement and decided to wait. 2 hours later and they had yet to show. His heart had been beating faster and faster as the seconds continued to tick away while he waited. A crippling fear was latching onto his emotions. Had he done something to annoy them? Was that the reason why they had not came? No sooner had these thoughts began to filter to the rest of his mind, did he shut them down. There was no reason for them not to come and see him. He had just been his normal self and they seemed to like him, so that couldn't have been the reason they didn't show. It had to be something else. He nodded to himself, trying to reassure his own reasoning. That's right, it's just something else. Deciding to wait a bit longer to see if at least one of them would come, he silently scolded himself the way his parents often would. He could have been doing something while he had waited. Instead, he had just wasted over 2 hours doing nothing and vowed not to do that again. Sighing to himself, he looked up to the sky and could see that nightfall was only an hour or 2 away from descending. He got up, dusted himself off, and made his way back home. He would check again tomorrow, but instead send a clone to check and send the information back to him. The following day, the time to head to the creek had finally arrived. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He silently created a single clone and sent it off to do its assignment. Deciding to use this opportunity for more training, he created more clones and had them do chakra exercises. Meanwhile, he would explore more of the forest. Always expect the unexpected, never assume anything. The words his mother had spoken to him kept repeating over and over as he explored further and further that he decided to heed them. He didn't turn back, no, instead he decided to do something else instead. He was going to build a second home out in the forest. It would serve as training for his body since he didn't want to use chakra out of the boundary, and it would provide shelter for him and his family should anything ever happen. Neither boy had shown up yet again, unfortunately, in the hours he had been out in the forest. It had not, however, been all for naught. He had located a very big tree that would serve as the foundation for his new home and even began to design it. This project would take him a few months to finish, but figuring the clones could do the work, it could probably get finished before that. 4 days later. Finally, it had been 4 days, but finally, on the 5th day they had arrived. The clone Naruto had kept sending day after day had finally dispelled and sent him good news. He had dropped his task of his makeshift home in the forest for the moment and summoned more clones to continue to work on it. In the 4 days, he and his clones had gotten enough wood from the forest to start on the floor and a bit on the walls, but that was it. Finally, Naruto was too happy to continue to think about his home and sped over to the creek much faster. The weights being little more of an afterthought. Having finally arrived at his destination, he spotted Madara and a hunched-over Hashirama on the ground looking at Iwata. "Yo, long time no see." Greeted Madara awkwardly. "It's Hashirama," he muttered, a bit miffed he couldn't remember his name. "Naruto," replied the blonde. Right. Well, how are you two doing?" "I'm doing good. A bit better as of recently," chirped Naruto, a smile in place. Hashirama didn't answer. "Why are you sulking for?" queried Madara. It was an odd sight for him since the boy had such a bubbly personality just a few days ago. He still didn't answer. "What's wrong?" asked both Naruto and Madara simultaneously. Hashirama looked up at them with sadness in his eyes. "Mind if I ask you some?" "Never mind. No need to be shy. We're all ears," stated the other raven-haired youth. Naruto nodded in agreement. "Yeah, if there's something bothering you, you can tell us. We're all friends here." The duo could see Hashirama struggling with himself if he should speak or not. "Don't worry about it," he replied. "Come on, just spit it out already." Madara was starting to get annoyed. The blonde narrowed his own eyes at him, about to warn him to back off since it was a sensitive subject for Hashirama. "Really, it's nothing." Naruto's own eyes turned to Hashirama as he kept repeating nothing was wrong over and over when something was clearly wrong. Madara sighed. "We'll be here all day if you don't tell us what's bothering you." "It's okay, don't trouble yourself over me. It's nothing to worry about." He may have said that, but the tears rolling down his face said different. That was the last straw. "Damn you. Here I am trying to help you with your damn problem and you won't let me. Just hurry the hell up and tell us already," roared Madara, arms in the air. Naruto decided to intervene before their friendship turned ugly. "Don't worry about Madara," he told Hashirama. "That's just his way of showing he's worried about you." Madara turned away, a faint coloring on his cheeks. Someone was able to tell. "So, can you please tell us what's bothering you?" asked the blonde. "My little brother was killed," he replied in a hushed voice. The other two stiffened when they heard the reason. I always come here when I feel like this. Everything just bottled up inside of me," he said, looking at the water. "I look at the flow of the current and I feel like all of my troubles are just washing away." Naruto looked at Hashirama with sadness, hearing what had happened. He looked at Madara and could see that the boy was looking at Hashirama with pain in his own eyes. "Is it the same for either of you?" asked Hashirama. Naruto shook his head while Madara didn't answer. "Either of you have any siblings?" He hesitated in asking such a question since it could be taken in a suspicious way. Thankfully, neither of them took it as such. "None," was all Naruto had to say. "I have 4 brothers," replied Madara, a bitter smile on his face. "Or rather, I used to have 4 brothers." He looked at the other two. "This is what it means to be a shinobi. Death is always around any corner." Naruto didn't open his mouth to speak, instead choosing to listen. He was learning more and more every day about shinobi life. He would have asked his parents, but he figured they may not tell him since it was probably the reason they were secluded to begin with. "From what I can tell, the only possible way to avoid needless death is to be upfront with the other side. Perhaps even, I don't know, form an alliance with them," stated Madara. "Unfortunately, that's just wishful thinking. Shinobi are too proud, paranoid, and suspicious of everyone to allow that." Hashirama looked at his friend. "Do you really believe that nobody will ever be able to understand and be honest with the other side?" He didn't believe that, he just couldn't. Naruto spoke up. "I don't believe that." He had their attention. "What do you mean?" "What I mean is that it doesn't have to be the entirety of a group who has to be honest and upfront with one another. As long as there is one person from each side that does those two things, then I believe that with time, both groups will soon follow." Hummed Madara. "That sounds much more plausible than what me or Hashirama were talking about. It sounds more doable." He put his arm over Naruto's shoulder. "I hope that someday, someone will do what you are suggesting." Leaning down and picking up a stone, he separated from Naruto and chucked his stone. "Hey, looks like this time, I got one over. Now neither of you are the only ones who got one over." Naruto smirked at Madara and gave him a high five. Hashirama was watching them interact with one another and smiled. The two? No, not two, three. The three of them were living proof that they could put their differences aside and come together. Granted, they didn't know each other's surnames, but that part would take some time. After all, you didn't learn to run before you could crawl. It seems we three have something in common. You know that I can read you like an open book, right? Said Madara, looking at Hashirama's stunned face. Wah, you have no sense of style, commented Madara. Naruto was right. Look at your haircut and those clothes. Don't get out much, do you? He said, smirk in place. Looks like you finally agreed with me about the bullhead. Hashirama's eye twitched. I guess that's the only thing we have in common. Oh well. It was starting to get dark, probably within the hour. Well guys, it was nice seeing and talking to you again, but I think I should head home, said Naruto. Only one other agreed. Yeah, same for me. I'm going to stay a bit longer, replied Hashirama. The other two shrugged. So when would you guys like to meet again? Asked the blonde. He might as well ask them and get a straight answer. He didn't want to waste chakra by sending a clone here, even though he wouldn't really feel it. How about once every 6 days, and we meet on the 7th? Offered Madara. The other two agreed when Hashirama spoke up. I also suggest meeting here and then moving ourselves to different places. Naruto understood immediately, hearing his mother's words in his head. Alright then, that sounds like a plan, said the blonde. I'll see you guys in 7 days. His piece was said, he vanished via body flicker, surprising the other two. Having finally made it out of the woods and back home before he could hear an earful from his mother for just making it back before night, he went to his room. It had been odd though. He hadn't spotted either of his parents in the living room nor anywhere else. Having not checked their bedroom, he distributed his weight evenly so as to avoid making sound and placed his ear on their door. What's that noise? He was hearing a light noise coming from their room, but he had never heard anything like it before. Shrugging it off as something unusual to look into later, he went to his room and went to sleep. The following weeks, Naruto was once more making his way over to his friends. They had been doing this for the past weeks and so far, had yet to be found. It was great. All they did was talk and then train some more. He wasn't sure how long the days were for Hashirama and Madara until they would meet, but they weren't honestly that bad for him. During the 6 days he would be waiting, he would often spend it with his mother and father or on his home. Speaking of his home, the project was almost done. The ground was done, as were the walls and the roof. He still needed a door and furniture, along with a few other things. One thing he had realized after he had finished it was that he didn't want someone to accidentally find it and do anything to it. So it was because of this that he began to focus on genjutsu and casting an illusion over the house or even possibly the area. That was mostly what he did in his off time away from friends. So far, the times he had been with friends, they had been really productive. They had done as Hashirama had said and left the area once they arrived. They had found a bunch of different areas that offered different types of surroundings for training. They named the training grounds with numbers and so far there were only 7. Today they would be going to the 7th one, his favorite. Naruto was on the sidelines, carefully watching the spar between Madara and Hashirama. He was silently studying their forms, noting one relied a bit more on power while the other seemed to wait for the attack and then respond. Both of them were way more advanced than him. Draw, he announced. He was the official. What? I said it's a draw. Naruto repeated. Neither of you is getting the upper hand on the other. Going by this rate, we'll be here until nightfall. And I want my turn. He whined. TCH. I guess it would only be fair, hummed Hashirama. I will be the official this time. Alright, Naruto stepped up and faced Madara. Rules are the same. Unarmed combat only, nothing else. The two nodded. This fight will be over when I call it. Begin. Naruto watched as his friend relaxed into his stance, waiting for him to charge. He complied. Naruto ran forward, moving side to side, trying to throw him off. He slid to the ground suddenly with a low kick that missed, and just barely dodged a kick sent towards his chin. He flipped backwards, sending another kick, this time to the chin of Madara who slapped his foot away easily. Not one to be discouraged, he ran at him again, throwing wild punch after wild punch, nothing landing. Madara on the other hand parried each attack, grunting as he directed each of the heavy punches away from his body. His own attacks, however, did land on the blonde, yet he kept getting back up. You have no form whatsoever. Softly commented Madara. Who taught you taijutsu? No one, happily supplied Naruto, having heard him. I don't really know a style. I haven't even really started on one yet. He replied, rushing him once more. What? Madara said, incredulously. How can you not know a style yet still try and fight either of us? By this point Naruto had stopped, hearing the tone in his voice. It didn't matter to me that I didn't know one yet. He replied. I just wanted to spar with the both of you. He smiled. He just wanted to do things with his friends and not feel left out. It may not matter to you, but it does to us. Hashirama agreed with Madara. We three are here to become stronger in order to accomplish what we have set out to do. He stated. Hashirama clapped, getting their attention. Okay, I think we should call this spar. We need to discuss a style for you and then any weak points we might have. From there we can then help one another in correcting them, said Hashirama. Alright, said Madara, looking at the blonde. What do you want to learn? I don't know. The only unarmed combat I've seen is the two of yours. Hashirama hummed and looked at his raven-haired friend. What did you glean from your short spar? Madara closed his eyes, recalling the fight. He's fast, and his punches are heavy. He rubbed his arms. I see. That is a deadly combination, commented the bullhead. Perhaps joint manipulation? He mumbled. What's that? Asked the blonde. Basically the spot where our bones connect which allow us to move or bend, answered Hashirama since he knew about this stuff. Joint manipulation allows you to deliver varying degrees of pain to an opponent and in some cases even injure them. Whoa, yep. Normally this isn't all that practical for most shinobi except for those of us who are exceptionally fast. With you being both fast and strong, once you take hold, one move is all it would take for you to tear or break the tendon or bone. That sounds useful, but I don't know much about the human body, replied Naruto. It really did sound useful to him, and even should he not be able to use it in combat, who's to say he couldn't use it on someone who was unconscious, keep them from making hand seals. That however shouldn't be all he learns though, added Madara. What happens when he can't grab a hold of someone? Or someone is faster than him? This is also true, agreed Hashirama. With his speed, he can react and act in just a matter of seconds. He needs to learn how to use an opponent's speed and power against them, stated Madara. This is all well and good, but how am I supposed to learn these things? Questioned Naruto. He would have used his clones but he was already at his max set by his mother. Those clones were on the house and he didn't want them doing anything but finishing that. Hashirama and Madara looked at one another and nodded. We can teach you. In order for them all to get stronger, then some things from their own families would have to be shared. Although neither of the others would ever know that it came from their families. I also have a few scrolls on the human body that I could let you borrow, offered Hashirama. He had already finished those a few times already. It was why he was so familiar with joint locks. Wow, thanks guys. I don't have anything I can teach you though. He would have shown them the clone technique but his mother said it was a secret family technique, so he couldn't teach it to them. They waved him off. It's fine. We all have the same goal and it would make little sense if all of us couldn't get there at the same time, stated Hashirama. He speaks the truth. Naruto couldn't say anything, he was speechless. He was really glad he had met these two all those days ago. They continued their training session while showing Naruto the parts he would need to create a personal style of taijutsu for himself. 2 weeks later, while the trio had originally agreed to meet every 7 days, they had often discarded the rule and met much more frequently. Naruto had received the scrolls from Hashirama while receiving personal training from Madara. His taijutsu was coming along nicely. He's been incredibly busy as of late in the past 2 weeks. His normal exercise routine was unaffected as it just kept increasing as he went. No, what he was referring to was his other time. With his house in the forest complete and just lacking furniture which he could eventually get, he was training his genjutsu himself while his clones had begun basic training with fuinjutsu, under supervision from both his parents. He was only able to accomplish so many things because the limit on his clones had been raised by his parents since they felt it was time to. From what the clones would often send him, his parents were slave drivers when it came to seals. I'm so glad I'm focusing on illusions. He shivered at the thought of being under the scrutinizing eyes of his parents. Hopefully that day wouldn't come for a while. You know, started Hashirama, breaking Naruto's muse. The way I see it, permanent lasting peace is the key, he stated. But then again, those are just pretty words. I have no clue where we would even start. He mumbled. Well, first off you start by never wavering and standing firm by your convictions, replied Madara. Naruto agreed. Then you attain unmatched strength and power. No one will want to follow anyone who is weak. Naruto chimed in. I agree with you on that point, but power and strength aren't everything. Madara scoffed, clearly not believing him. If you want people to follow you and your ideals, then you have to prove yourself to them through your actions, not through how much power you wield. He replied. Both are good points, said Hashirama, playing peacekeeper. We'll just keep mastering technique on top of technique to become strong. Then when we are strong can we begin to really do something to spread our ideals. He was about to continue when Madara went over to the ledge of the slab of rock they were sitting on and began to go to the bathroom, or tried to. Naruto and Hashirama both looked at their friend with half-lidded eyes and smirks. The bull-headed one walked over to him. You really can't drain it, he teased. I told you, yelled Madara. I'm really sensitive to my surroundings. His body shook as he couldn't get it to come out. So it seems that Naruto was correct. Hashirama told himself. You really do have a problem with your plumbing downstairs. He concluded. Yep, I've always been spot on when guessing these things about people. Madara glowered. If either of you say another word, then you'll both be swimming in my urine. He threatened. All he had to do was turn around. Naruto snorted. I highly doubt that. If he couldn't get it out without them looking, then there was no way he could do it facing them. Madara heard him snort and was about to speak up. Anyways, interrupted Hashirama. I wanted to let you guys know that I came up with a badass technique. By this point Madara had covered himself up and turned around. Oh, do tell. Yes, please stop keeping us in suspense. Hashirama couldn't detect the sarcasm from Naruto nor why he was smirking, but Madara could since he was snickering. Naruto was glad he could at least make one of them laugh. He meant no harm when he said that to Hashirama, it was all just in good fun. Anyways, I call this one the Mega Fist of Fiery Illusion Shuriken Slicer Double Impact Jutsu. Madara had a look of disgust on his face. Like he ate something sour. That is a mouthful. He finally got out. Hey, that sounds pretty cool. Naruto admitted, looking at his friend. Can you teach it to me? Madara rolled his eyes. He needed to put a stop to this. Hashirama nodded, enthusiastically. Of course I'll teach it to you, Naruto. You see, the trick behind it is. I have a better idea. Interrupted Madara. We'll scale these rock walls behind me and we'll work on our upper body strength today. He patted the giant mountain wall behind him. Hashirama was sulking. Madara sighed, shaking his head. You can't sulk just because things don't go your way. Well, while I really want to learn that technique, as long as we get some training in today then I'm all good. Replied the blonde. Yay! Madara was drowned out. Gia ha ha ha. I'm gonna be first, screamed Hashirama, running up the mountainside. Naruto not far behind him. Madara was shocked. You assholes, he screamed. After a few seconds, the trio were situated on the top. The winner is me, panted Hashirama, a smile on his face. No, shit, you cheated, replied Madara, panting just as hard. Well, at least I didn't come in last. Hey, it's not my fault. I'm wearing weights. Both Madara and Hashirama looked at him confused. Weights? You're not wearing any weights though? Questioned Madara. He knew what training weights looked and felt like, and his friend didn't have them on. I have chakra weights on. The more chakra I apply the heavier they become. Now his two friends were intrigued. That sounds very useful, muttered Hashirama. Do you think I can have some as well? I as well. Naruto wasn't sure if he could or not. I don't know. These were applied to me by my father. I can try to make copies but don't get your hopes up. He was speaking the truth. He may be studying seals under his parents' guidance, but that didn't mean he was that good at it yet. They both nodded. Man, would you look at this view? Hashirama said, breathless. The vista in front of him was truly magnificent. The other two agreed. Yeah, you can see everything from here. I know for certain that I've got superior vision. Madara looked at his friends. Do either of you feel like having a contest? That was random, said Hashirama. You are that confident in your eyes? Yeah, my eyesight is good, but even I can't see that far from here. Added Naruto. Madara puffed out his chest. Of course I'm confident. After all, I have the sherry. The blonde and other raven-haired youth looked at their friend and wondered why he had stopped so abruptly. What's wrong? They chorused. Madara looked away. Nothing. Truth is, I'm simply mediocre. The blonde snorted. Modesty doesn't suit you. He ignored his blonde friend. If I was really elite, then my brothers wouldn't have. He trailed off. I couldn't protect any of them. A solemn tone in his voice. So, all of your brothers are. No, I've still got one younger brother left. A fierce determination in Madara's eyes. I'm gonna protect him at any and all costs. He felt a hand on his shoulder. I believe that you can and will protect your brother, stated Naruto. Hashirama plopped up from his seat. It's settled then. This will be headquarters for our village. It'll be a place where kids will never have to kill each other, he announced. I can see it now. A school to train and educate young children. We can assign missions, teachers can delegate them accordingly by rank. No kid in our village will ever have to experience the horrors or the battlefield. Madara was chuckling at his enthusiasm. I don't know if you're a visionary or just plain insane. An insane visionary, offered Naruto. So, what do you guys think? Naruto gave him a thumbs up. I like it, Madara agreed, as do I. It'll allow me to keep a closer eye on my brother. So what would we call the village anyways? All of them paused for a moment and tried to come up with names. Hey, Naruto got their attention. How about the Great Na? No, interrupted Madara. I can already tell that it's going to sound stupid. He put a stop to that before he could get started. Naruto was pouting. But you didn't even know what I was going to say. He mumbled. Trust me, I could already tell it would be no good. Deadpanned Madara. Well, let's just hear him out. Hashirama wanted to give him a chance. Fine, sighed Madara. As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted. How about the Great Naruto Village? He announced. Madara shook his head. How about no? That just sounds stupid. Right, Hashi. I like it, replied Hashirama with a nod. The Great Maelstrom Village. People will totally respect that. How did you know the other meaning of my name? Questioned the blonde. He didn't think anyone knew that. He got waved off. It wasn't too hard actually. I just thought of the opposite of ramen toppings. He replied cheekily. Just shut up the both of you, growled Madara. That's not what we are calling the village that I had a hand in creating. For now, just leave it alone. We'll come up with something later. Fine, we'll leave it alone for now, stated Hashirama. We should probably start heading back, said Naruto, looking at the sky. Yeah, we should. The other two also looked up and could see it was starting to get dark. They bid each other goodbye and left. 5 days later, Naruto was wearing the largest smile on his face right now. Aside from going to see his friends and continue their training together, he was going to continue learning a very useful skill from Madara. When the three of them had met 3 days prior to this visit, Madara had brought up the something that had caught his ear. Sensors. He hadn't been sure what they were, but when his friend had explained it to him, he knew he had it. It was the reason why he was able to feel things that were never near him. He was very glad he had decided to hone it all those years ago, but now he was going to train with someone who knew what they were doing. It was the reason why he was excited about training today. Not only were they meeting 2 times in a week, but he was going to train in something he had already started on. However, one thing did strike him as odd when they were having the conversation. Madara had stated that he had to train his control and senses to get where he was at, but Naruto never had done that. One day, he just started feeling things around him. Madara had told him it was possible he was just born much more sensitive to things around him, and it only started to show as he had started to train. That made sense to the blonde. Well, whatever it was, he was glad he had it. Finally arriving to the creek, he half expected both of his friends to be having a spar. Instead, he arrived to an even stranger scene. They were both there, but both on the opposite sides of the creek. He was about to make himself known and jump out when he watched them throw the stones in their hands to the other and could have sworn he saw a look of worry on their faces. Why are they worried for? Deciding to expect the unexpected, he revealed himself to his friends. Hey, what's wrong you two? He asked. They both stiffened when they heard his voice. Oh no, what is he doing here? And now of all times. Madara had a grim look on his face. I completely forgot about him coming. Hashirama scolded himself for his lapse. This is not going to end well. Naruto narrowed his eyes when he suddenly felt 4 chakra signatures. All 4 jumped out from the forest, two shadows landing behind both Madara and Hashirama. He could see the resemblance that his two friends held to the unknown four. The man standing behind Hashirama was a very tall, heavy-set-looking man. Dark eyes glaring at the man across from him while his shoulder-length black hair and piece of cloth swayed in the wind. The boy next to him was fair-skinned, dark eyes, and white shaggy hair. He had the same stern-looking face the older man had. He also looked about a year or two younger than himself. He was still a bit miffed that out of the three of them, he was the youngest at 8. They were both 10 and he wished they were the same age. It would have been another thing they would have shared. His musing was cut short. Well. Looks like we were on the same page, weren't we, Senju Batsuma? Stated the man behind Madara. Seems the miracles will never cease, Uchiha Tajima, replied Batsuma, glaring. Naruto now looked at the now-named Tajima. He was just a bit shorter than Batsuma but nonetheless intimidating. His dark black eyes were set on a glare as he brushed the black hair, which framed his face, to the side. The boy next to him was a carbon copy of Madara, spiky black hair, black eyes, and fair skin. Yo, Tobirama, said the younger Uchiha, sword at the ready. Yo, Izuna, replied the now-named Tobirama, following suit. He honestly didn't know if he should be glad or a bit annoyed that they had yet to notice his presence. He chalked it up to them not just knowing him. Yeah, that was it. About to open his mouth to say something, he was stopped since the four new arrivals had jumped at one another fiercely. The two adult men battling one another while their sons down below battled to the death. Not sure how this was going to turn out, he looked over to his two friends and could see they were completely shell-shocked. Unable to move or say anything that would or could stop this. Stop it, he heard them yell. It didn't work. None of the combatants were paying them any attention, they couldn't afford to. One look away and it was all over. His eyes widened when both men took out kunai, and hurtled them towards the other man, son, hoping that with their death, it would be enough to land a killing blow on the other. Both Hashirama and Madara had hesitated for no more than a second, but that was enough. Even had they thrown their own weapons, they wouldn't have made it in time. He reacted quickly, taking out two of his own kunai that he had brought for today and looked at the spots he would need to hit in order to stop them. He crossed his arms together and flung them. Clang! Both of the weapons' trajectories had been changed as the kunai landed on a tree. Madara and Hashirama jumped in front of their siblings, ready to shield them from any more attacks. It was only after Naruto had interfered that everything had seemingly calmed down. Now it was when everyone noticed him, both arms still outstretched, indicating it was he who had deflected them. His two friends had sent him small nods of thanks, but everyone had seen them. Who are you, boy? Said Tajima, contempt in his voice, not liking that his fight was interrupted. Yes, who are you? Added Batsuma, agreeing with his enemy, loath as he was to do it. Is it not proper to introduce yourself first before asking for another name? Questioned the blonde, a small smirk on his face. Both men, jaws clenched at his attitude while their eyes narrowed at him. They were both studying him up and down, side to side, even when their enemy was only feet away from them. Uchiha Tajima, head of the Uchiha clan. Senju Batsuma, head of the Senju clan. Seeing as their fathers were going along with this, the two youngest decided they didn't want to be left out. Uchiha Izuna, brother of Madara, stated the younger brother, who mentally smirked. He had announced himself before Tobirama had a chance to. Tobirama had a scowl on his face. Senju Tobirama, brother of Hashirama. Namikaze Naruto. He actually wasn't going to give out his name, but he didn't want to risk them getting angry and then deciding to kill him. While he was sure he could escape, he didn't want them to follow him as he lead them to his house, and inadvertently his parents. This was his problem, he would handle it. Namikaze were the thoughts of everyone, never having heard such a name before. I've never heard of a clan such as that, stated the Senju clan leader. Nor have I. Naruto shrugged. We are new. Then I'm afraid it will be over before it even begins. Started Tajima. You will die here today along with this Senju scum. Before he could make good on his threat, his oldest stepped in. Don't bother, he said with a stoic face. Hashirama is stronger than me, and Naruto there is stronger than the both of us. He stated. Now this little piece of news drew the clan head attention back to the blonde boy. They couldn't believe that two of the most promising shinobi from the two most powerful clans in the lands were weaker than an upstart from a fledgling clan. No way, Izuna said in disbelief. They're both stronger than you, big bro? Tajima scoffed. I have a hard time believing that. The Senju perhaps is stronger as you say, loath I am to admit it. He muttered. But I refuse to believe that this other boy is your superior, he snarled. Madara eyed his father like he was an idiot. Well, he is. His chakra reserves alone dwarf everyone else, here, combined. He let out that little nugget of information, he was sure that would shut them up. He never understood why adults were just so stupid when it came to certain things. Like listening to their children. They were more perceptive than people gave them credit for. His control of his chakra is good. The same as me, possibly higher. He is also much faster than Hashirama or myself. And that's not counting his chakra weights. Chakra weights? Repeated the clan heads, glaring at one another for copying each other. Naruto glared at his friend for revealing that. Madara saw the glare and ignored it. That's right, chakra weights. It weighs down the body depending on how much chakra you have. So the more you have, the heavier you become, but the faster you get as a result. He said. Naruto's eyes widened a fraction of an inch. His friend had given away his training exercise but not the correct specifics of how it worked. What an ingenious way of training. But Tsuma looked at the boy in interest now. His value in life was now far outweighing his value in death. He would need to find a way to capture the boy for his clan. Tajima was thinking along the same lines as his enemy. We must find a way to acquire this. With superior speed and our dojutsu, nobody would stand against us. He needed this boy on his side. And from the way he deflected both kunai, at the same time with both hands tells me he is also very skilled in that as well. Madara had continued to list off his friend's strengths. Then we should eliminate him. Lied Tajima. Before he becomes too much of a threat. Madara shook his head negatively. That wouldn't work either. You remember that I am a censor, right? His father gave him a stiff nod. Well, right now I sense over 100 bodies just outside of this creek, surrounding both sides. His declaration caused everyone but him to stiffen and have their weapons at the ready. Their eyes searched every possible location, yet nothing came. Why aren't they on us? Asked Izuna, slightly shaking a bit. I never said it was an enemy. Replied Madara. The one thing similar about all of the chakra signatures is that they are the same as Naruto's. Hey, so you were able to sense all of my shadow clones, huh? Shadow clones? Asked Tobirama. The term sounded dumb. Why not just name them clones? Whoever created the technique, whether it was the blonde or not, had to be an idiot. Yep, he chirped. I can create several copies of myself. The clan heads were now starting to get wary of the boy. His danger level was just too high for them to try and take a chance at capturing him or trying to take his secrets. If they botched this up and he escaped, he could very well come seeking revenge against them. They did not want unneeded deaths from the boy who would grow up into a monster made of human flesh. So they did the only thing they could at the moment, they called a retreat. They were not going to risk anything with the boy nor the clones surrounding them. The two clan leaders looked at one another and knew there would be other days to kill on another. It looks like talk of building our own village was nothing more than wishful thinking. Naruto, Hashirama. Madara, do you really believe that? Naruto shook his head. I don't believe that, Madara. Remember, all it takes is for one person from each side to understand the other. He looked at the two of them back and forth. You two already have that, along with me and my clan. Madara smiled sadly at him, even if what he said was true. Be that as it may, we can't really do anything now. He was referring to their situation at the moment. We don't have much power yet. And for what it's worth. He looked at the both of them for a moment. I really had a blast here with the two of you. Let's go, ordered Tajima, sparing a glance at Naruto. If you attack us, then you will have the entire Uchiha clan to contend with. We will burn this forest to the ground and kill you. He threatened. The blonde just looked at him coldly. It seems he would need to set up some things around the forest to prevent this. He gave the Uchiha man a stiff nod, same with the Senju. Until next time. Madara was beginning to leave when Hashirama called out to him. Madara, you don't really believe everything was just wishful thinking, do you? After all our brainstorming, we'd finally. I agree with Hashirama on this one, Madara. Out of the three of us, You are the most hopeful for a village where we could avoid this exact situation. Pointed out the blonde. Why can't they just let me leave, thought Madara. Can't they see how hard this is for me? Trust me guys. Both took note of the emotion in his voice. I really wish things could be different, but at the end of the day. He looked at Hashirama. You're a Senju, and the blood of my brothers are on the hands of your clan. Madara then looked to his last friend. I have no problems with you or the Namikaze clan, but even you and yours will feel my wrath if you harm my family. He threatened. Hashirama was getting apprehensive, thinking his friend was suddenly going to attack. Naruto's muscles tensed as he too believed he would attack. He really did not want to fight one of his only friends, but he would not lay down either. Madara noticed their tensing. Relax, no further blood will be shed today. However, the next time we meet, it'll be as adversaries on the field of battle, Senju Hashirama. He told his friend, and when that time comes, you will address me as Uchiha Madara. And me? Questioned Naruto. The eldest Uchiha simply stared at him for a moment. If we meet on the field of battle, then it is possible. He stated, wanting this to be as clear as possible. Anyone who is not an Uchiha is an enemy. Pray we do not cross paths, Namikaze Naruto. As he said this, his eyes took on a different color. You see that, father? Izuna exclaimed excitedly. Big brother's eyes have. We may have failed to eliminate the Senju, but we did gain information on another shinobi clan while you awakened our superior bloodline. The Senju were in shock. His Sharingan, did it just awaken? But Tsuma couldn't believe it. Just how had their clan been the losers today? They had failed in their original mission. The enemy, Sun, awakened his bloodline, and another new clan with a powerful youngster had forced them to retreat. This was just shameful. Naruto didn't know what the big deal with his eyes were, and he didn't know it at the time, but that would be the last day he would see his friends. For a very, very long time. Arriving home much earlier than what he would have liked, he spotted both of his parents outside on the porch, just enjoying nature and each other's company. His father was looking worse and worse, and he didn't know why he was even outside, but figured he must have whined to his mother about it. He took a deep breath and mentally began to prepare himself for the conversation he had been wanting to have for a while. It only took running into other shinobi to push him. Ka-chan, Tu-chan. He grabbed their attention. Can you tell me about the shinobi clans? They both were startled by the sudden question and the subject. Why do you want to know about them? Asked Yusuke. Well, it was the moment of truth. I kinda had a run-in with some recently. What? Screeched Kumiko, immediately jumping from her seat to check him. Are you alright? They didn't hurt you, did they? She asked, frantically. I'm fine. Yusuke was a bit more composed than his wife, but only by a little. Did they say what clan they belonged to? Senju and Uchiha. The two former Uzumaki now turned Namikaze paled when they heard those names. Why had the two most fearsome clans been fighting so close to them? How did you even come across them? Well, when I went into that forest for the first time, I met two kids 2 years older than me. At first we just skipped stones across the creek, but then we began to train with each other. Once we started seeing how fast we were growing, we met more and more. Everything was fine until today. What happened today? I arrived and saw the both of the on opposite sides. After a few seconds 4 shadows jumped out and 2 landed behind each of my friends. They began to fight and they finally noticed me when I saved the lives of the younger brothers of my friends. After that they questioned me but only got my name and a few of my skills. Go on. They could tell he had more to say. I got their names. Tajima, Izuna, and Madara, my friend. The others are Tsuma, Tobirama, and Hashirama, my other friend. Oh dear. Kumiko held her cheek in worry. I do believe that those are the current clan heads and their sons. They only knew that information since at the time they were with their clan, and the news had broken that clan heirs to the 2 strongest families had been born. Yusuke was rubbing the bridge of his nose. Okay, did anything else happen? Just that Madara had no problem with me or my clan but would not hesitate should we ever cross paths. Okay, so it seems that they aren't going to be actively looking for you, but we should still put up more seals, just as precautions. He looked at his son. Your training is going to increase. Starting tomorrow you're going to learn how to make the seals we put around our home. Naruto nodded. Now, you wanted to know about clans, right? Yes. Very well, but keep in mind that I do not know all of them. He stated. Let's see, we have the Senju, Uchiha, Fuma, Sarutobi, Kagaya, and Uzumaki. He mumbled the last one. Wow, that's a lot. Can you explain more about them? In a moment, but I have a question for you. What are you going to do now? I'm not really sure, admitted the young blonde. At first I was training so I could become strong to protect you too, but after meeting my friends I came to have a purpose. Build a village with them, and protect everyone in it. They both smiled fondly at his nature to protect them. That indeed is a lofty goal. One you can still accomplish on your own, without them, but it will be much more difficult, admitted Yusuke. You need to get much stronger if you wish to protect your mother, me, and the rest of the villagers. Naruto agreed with his father about getting stronger but not about the former. It wouldn't be the same without my two friends, he replied softly. For now, I will train and then I will gain experience. By the time I come back, I can focus on building a village, he said, and who knows, I might run into my old friends out in the world. Kumiko rolled her eyes but had a smile on her face. Always the optimist. After his goal was spoken in further detail with his parents, he had learned what he could from his parents about the clans they mentioned. The only ones aside from Senju and Uchiha that interested him were Kagaya and Uzumaki. Unfortunately, his parents had limited information on both and made do with what they did have. 7 years later, Naruto breathed in and out. He was currently in a meditative pose, honing his sensor ability. This was something he had been doing for the past 7 years. He was now 15 now, but everything had been a blur since the tragedy that had transpired in the past year. It had been the toughest year of his life. Sure, the training on his body was taxing, but it didn't compare to the passing of his father. He knew the man had been sick, his health failing him, but since he was so focused the 5 years before he had passed, he had put it to the back of his mind. It wasn't until certain parts his training had been completed that he had even noticed, and when he did, a pang of guilt coursed through him. He had been so focused on himself that he had ignored his father. He had tried to rectify that by spending as much time with him recently, but in his mind, it hadn't been enough, and now he was gone. His mother had taken it the hardest. She wouldn't eat, couldn't sleep in her bed, and would try to busy herself so she wouldn't remember. They both had to come to terms with his death and chose to remember all the good things about him. He would always be there for her, especially after his last conversation with his father. Flashback. Naruto had been called into his parents' room, to his father's deathbed. The once strong man was now a frail shell of his former self. He stepped closer to his bed as he had been beckoned. So, how is your training coming along, son? It's coming along fine. How are you feeling? He asked. Do you need something? He wanted his father as comfortable as he could be. No, I'm fine. He waved his son off. He then turned serious. Naruto, I don't have much time left and there is something that I want to tell you, but first, I want to give you this. What is it? Your mother and I have never truly been honest with you. This scroll here holds many more inside of it. This was applied to your body with seal when I found you. Yusuke saw the alarmed look on his son's face. He placed a comforting hand on his arm. I found you when you were a baby. All you had on you was a necklace with your name on a piece of paper. I'm sorry to tell you this now, but we are not your blood parents. We're actually from the Uzumaki clan but left because of all the fighting. Naruto was breathing a bit harder but nodded his head for his father to continue. Know this, my son, just because we are not related does not mean that we did not love you as our own. We just felt it better to inform you when you were older, and I'll admit that this isn't the best situation to tell you, but I wanted you to know before I passed on. He explained. You were the best thing to come into our lives that day. 15 years ago, we had just been living from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. Such a droll life, he said humorlessly. But when you came into our lives, you gave us purpose. Since then, we have strived to see you reach your full potential, to become what we know you can be. And what's that? Naruto asked softly. The best, he simply replied. Is there anything you would like to ask me? He was silent for a moment. Why did my blood parents leave me? He asked. Did they not love me? Yusuke coughed violently before calming down. I do believe they did love you. Sometimes a situation will not always be in a person's control and they must adapt or make some sacrifices. They left you in order for you to survive while they may not have. It is a form of love, albeit shown differently. Naruto was starting to tear up. Remember, son, started Yusuke, the true measure of a shinobi is not how he lives, but how he dies. It's not what they do in life, but what they did before dying that proves their worth. He held his hand to his son, face. And I would say that I did a pretty good job in raising you before I move on. He chuckled. By this point, Naruto was crying. Yeah, you did a great job. He admitted. And I'll show the world soon enough. He smirked. Yusuke started to cough once more after he finished chuckling. He looked at his son and asked him for one last thing. Son. Naruto looked his father in the eyes. Protect your mother and yourself. This was his last request. You can count on me. He replied, determination in his eyes. Would you like me to bring mother for you? No, that's all right. I've already talked with her. Naruto nodded, leaned down, and gave his father a hug. I love you, son. I love you to dad. Those were the last words spoken between father and son. Namikaze Yusuke had passed away. Flashback end. It had taken him a few days to look over the scroll since he didn't much feel like learning anything after putting his father in the ground. After that it was just being around his mother and making sure she was okay. Once her grieving was over, a good amount of time had passed and he had opened it. The inside of it contained very destructive techniques, but only one really caught his attention. It was of his father's creation. After having practiced with Fuinjutsu for a few years under the guidance of his parents, he could safely say he was okay in the art. The creation he had been reading was something beyond his level, but it didn't mean he couldn't read it. It was a transfer technique meant to take out a person's life force and seal it into another. Everything had clicked for him after reading it. The seal had been applied to him. It was the reason he had to practice chakra control more often after he had gotten the seals placed on him all those years ago. His father had theorized that since his own body was already riddled with sickness, then it would take his life, but if he applied it to someone else, using his own body, then the chances of him dying were slim to none since he was healthy and had a lot of chakra. Only problem was, the person he wanted to use it on would refuse it. His mother. She however wouldn't let him. So for now, he would tweak it and hopefully he could change her mind on the matter. 2 years later, Naruto let out a small sigh. It had been 2 years since his father had passed on and 9 years since he'd last seen Hashirama or Madara. He had been sending clones to the creek recently to see if by some divine miracle he ran into one of them, no such luck. While his clone had been doing that, he had sent others all around the forest to construct more safe houses like the original one he had built as a child. Other than that, he had been refining his skills in all areas. He wasn't nearly as strong as he felt he could be and had just kept grinding and grinding every day. His mother would often train with him now as well, but with him now being a young man of 17 and her getting older, she couldn't keep up with him someday. She could hardly push him like before, now that he stood at 6 feet 1 and 170 pounds. Looking around the forest for any more spots that could be potential areas for construction on his houses or barrier seals for protection, he heard a scream. Sealing up his things, he took off where he last heard it. Finding the spot where the fighting was heaviest, he came across a strange scene. It was a man chasing a woman. Both were young, or at least younger than him, maybe. It didn't really matter how old they were. The woman was putting up a valiant effort and was keeping pace, but even he could see that she was tiring. She held herself up behind the trunk of a tree, catching her breath. He noticed the clan symbols of the two, Uchiha and Senju. Maizegakure no Jutsu, hiding with camouflage technique. This was a very useful technique that was listed inside of his scroll given to him by his father. It allowed him to become invisible to his surroundings by bending the light around him. He moved in for a closer inspection. He was left breathless. She was beautiful. Her hair was a rich shade of ebony. It flowed in waves to adorn her glowing, cream-colored skin. Her eyes were a bright sky blue and seemed to brighten up the area around her. A straight nose and full lips, she seemed the picture of perfection in his eyes. He however knew this was not the case with her. Yes, she was beautiful, but from just looking at her developing body hidden beneath black clothes and armor, there was a kunoichi. And a very deadly one. Sweat was trickling down her brow as he could see her concentrating her chakra, which was very large by the way, and trying to cast an area-wide genjutsu. It had no effect on the man. The man who was chasing her seemed oddly familiar to him. In fact, he looked a great deal like his friend Madara. He would need to see if he was correct on his theory. Continuing to follow after them, he could see the woman had led herself to a dead end, with the Uchiha creeping ever closer. It was time he made his appearance. Doing a few hand seals and gathering his chakra, he attacked. Futon. Daitapa, great breakthrough. The sudden gust of wind had taken them both by surprise, none more so than the Uchiha. He was knocked down on his back violently. Naruto dropped his camouflage and jumped down next to her. She tensed with a kunai in hand. He immediately held up his hands, giving her the universal message he was not there to attack. She didn't trust him, he could be working with her enemy. He turned around, showing his back to her. She calmed down a bit since she could take him out quickly if he did try something. She turned her attention back to the Uchiha who was grunting in pain and anger. He got up and turned to them, his crimson eyes narrowing. "Who the hell are you?" he screamed. I don't feel like telling you," he replied, knowing he was pissing the man off more. The woman was gaping, wondering if the man in front of her was an idiot. Because he certainly didn't look like one. Naruto looked at the Uchiha closely now. Yes, he could see the similarities. This young man was definitely his brother. The Uchiha grit his teeth in anger at being brushed off. "Why don't you explain to me why you were chasing this beautiful woman around?" asked Naruto. Said woman scowled openly at him for calling her as such but still had a small blush on her cheeks. No one had ever called her that before in her life. Others always saw her as too much of a tomboy. "I'm an Uchiha, she's a Senju," he said, like it explained everything. Naruto frowned at him for such an answer. "I see. It seemed that Madara's brother has taken to the ways of his clan." His eyes widened when he felt the rise in chakra from across him. He blurred through his hand seals and called upon his own chakra. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu, great fireball technique. Izuna blew out a giant fireball. Suijin. Suijinheki, water encampment wall. Placing his hands in front of him, he quickly started to gather the water from around him. Whether it be from the trees, grass, plants, or air, he took what he could get, the rest he provided. He heard a gasp behind him from the woman and didn't know why. Fire met the wall of water in a rush, burning everything in its path. Both elements clashed for dominance as neither wanted to give in to the other. Naruto suddenly added more chakra, completely overtaking the ball of fire, resulting in steam. Naruto grabbed the woman's hand and they both vanished, reappearing a few feet away. He could feel the younger brother backing away as well, but not enough to mask his presence. Swiping at a seal he had on his forearm, he unsealed two weapons. Eskrima sticks. He had learned this discipline more as a way to appease his mother early on in his life. She had wanted him to have some form of weapon, and since neither she nor his father, bless his soul, knew Kenjutsu, this was his only option. He would have to learn Kenjutsu somewhere else. Taking each stick in one hand apiece, he bolted to the side of the steam, using it as cover. The young Uchiha had yet to move from his location and he would take advantage of it. He striked hard and fast, nailing the Uchiha on the hinge joint, making him take a knee. He also tagged him on the ball and socket, making one of his shoulders a bit useless at the moment. By this point the steamy mist had cleared and the woman was stunned at how easily the blonde had taken him out. Naruto was about to bring his Eskrima down on his head, knocking him out when his eyes widened once more. His instincts also flared to life, yelling at him to move. He did as instructed. Amaterasu, heavenly illumination. The blonde had felt the enormous amount of chakra that had quickly built up in the Uchiha's eyes and was glad he had moved. Black flames had erupted from his eye and devoured everything in their path with an indulgence. What the hell was that? He eyed the younger brother carefully. "What is your name?" he asked. "Uchiha Izuna," he said in between breaths. His technique always left him like this. "You?" Naruto took note of his tiredness and the blood leaking from the eye. "Namikaze Naruto." "Namikaze?" thought both Izuna and the woman. "You are Madara's younger brother." It was a statement, not a question. Izuna nodded slowly. "I am. How do you know him?" he asked cautiously, not wanting to fight an enemy of his brother's while chasing one of his own. He shook his head. "Do you not remember your savior all those years ago?" Izuna had a calculating look in his eyes when realization hit. "I can see from your expression that you do remember. If I may ask, what was that you just used?" His curiosity getting the better of him. Izuna didn't reply. Naruto sighed. "Okay then, a better question." He then looked to the woman a few feet behind the both of them. "Why are you chasing her?" Madara's younger brother had an annoyed look on his face. "She's Senju, I'm Uchiha. We are enemies till the day we die." The blonde rolled his eyes and shook his head. I see, he muttered. If I were to ask you to leave, would you? Izuna snorted. Not until either I'm in the ground or she is. Naruto didn't like the sound of that. He wouldn't kill Izuna since he was his friend, brother, but he would rough him up, but even then, he didn't want this to get confrontational. An idea came to him. It was risky, but it could work. Not even to the man who you owe your life to? I would have thought that the Uchiha still had some form of honor, or was I mistaken? Izuna's jaw clenched. Naruto knew he had him. Your debt to me would be paid in full, he said. All you have to do is walk away and tell your superiors that you got her. Only us three would know the truth. Izuna didn't respond immediately as he was looking between the both of them. You're incredibly lucky you were dealing with me, and not my brother, he replied. He would have stopped at nothing to kill any Senju. Leave, my debt to you is paid. Somehow, Naruto doubted Madara would have stopped had the two of them met after so many years away from one another. And even should he have tried, he would have stopped him. The blonde Namikaze nodded his head in thanks. He and the Kunoichi were gone soon after. Naruto and the woman were a good distance away from their battlefield when the woman decided to speak up. May I know the name of the one who helped me? She asked, her eyes scanning her surroundings, a stoic look on her face. You didn't hear my talk with Izuna? No, I only heard your surname. Plus, she was busy keeping an eye on the Uchiha. Oh, well then my first name is Naruto. Namikaze Naruto. Now she recognized the name. I know you. Really? I'm sure we've never met before, he replied, amused. She blushed a bit. I mean, I know of you, she corrected. My father and older brother couldn't stop talking about you. My father wanted you to join us, or have you captured and killed? My brother on the other hand always had glowing things to say about you. Really now? Who is your brother? Hashirama. Naruto was shocked. He didn't know his friend had a younger sister. My name is Toka. She knew she was playing a dangerous game here, revealing her identity, but had the man in front of her wanted her dead, she would be dead. Plus, all of the stories she heard from her brother, she knew this Naruto wasn't a bad person. I see, he never mentioned he had a sister, he muttered. He could now see the logic behind the tactic though. No one would attack someone they didn't know existed, but a question still needed to be asked. What were you doing out there? And just how had Izuna even found you? I left my clan compound for some fresh air, and to get away from my family for a bit. She muttered the last part. Naruto had caught it though. Why would you want to get away from your family? He asked, not understanding. He loved his own family, his mother. He would never try to actively separate himself from them. The concept was just foreign to him. Toka got angry. You don't know what it's like to grow up underneath my brothers, always being overshadowed by them. She glared at Naruto. What did he know? Hashirama is going to be the next clan head, and is one of if not the strongest shinobi around. My other brother, Tobirama, is just as talented as him. She quieted down, her rant over. And then there is me. I know I'm a capable kunoichi who is strong, but compared to them, I'm nothing, she quietly said. Naruto said nothing, just listening to her. It was obvious she had pent-up feelings and needed to vent to someone. As for how he found me, I'm not sure. I had sensed something and then I was attacked. She didn't need to explain the aftermath since he was there. Now he was frowning as he had a bad feeling. Was he the only one out here? He may be a censor, but even he could only reach so far. This bad feeling was all the more why he would seek to expand his gift. I'm not sure, but I would most assuredly count on it. Their clan leader would most likely send out parties to make sure they exterminated any Senju they got a hold of. She spat. That had almost been her. That bad feeling had moved from the pit of his stomach to his mind. The possibility of more shinobi being in the forest was worrying, and while not searching for him or his mother directly, would still kill either of them should they meet. He needed to get home. Before he left, however, he asked Toka if it was all right if he could see her again. He didn't know why, but he had been compelled by some mystical force to do so. He had expected her to flat out refuse, but much to his surprise and happiness, she had agreed. Toka found the man in front of her interesting. He was unlike any person she had ever met. He didn't have the hardened attitude that most shinobi in the world had, yet was incredibly strong. And if going by the stories that her brother used to tell her, he was still hiding much of his power. She gave him instructions on how to get to the compound she lived at. She was quite happy with herself for some reason. Perhaps it was the independence of doing something that was unexpected of her, or she just wanted to get to know the person behind the stories she knew him from. Either way, they would meet again. He couldn't believe his eyes. His home, the one he had been raised in for his whole life, the one his parents had carefully created, was up in flames. Sweden. Mazarapa, water trumpet. He started to quell the flames before they burned the entire forest down. After doing that, he began his search for his mother, hoping she had made it out alive. Search and search he did, but after what felt like hours, he had stopped. Only one thought had entered his mind then and there: he had failed. He failed his father in his last request, and he had failed in protecting his mother. She was gone, just like his father years ago. He was all alone. Had his grief in losing his mother been higher, he wouldn't have heard the soft groaning. There she was, his mother, injured, but still very much alive. In his haste to see his mother, he had not noticed the man standing behind her unconscious form, blade at the ready. He froze when he saw the glint of steel pointed at her. "Who are you?" he asked, an edge to his voice. No response. "Were you the one who hurt my mother?" Still no response. Naruto started to tense, slowly reaching for the seal on his forearm. "Did you do this to our home?" Still nothing. "Answer me," he roared, unsealing his eskrima. He tossed the first one towards the man, sternum, and the second following right behind, this one looking to break his wrist. The hooded man deftly dodged the stick going for his chest by swiftly spinning, allowing the stick to graze his back as it continued its own path. The second had hit his leg as he had been spinning. "Shit," Naruto cursed, running forward and blurring through his hand seals. "Sweden. Teppodama, gunshot." His heart shattered. The man had finished spinning around just as he spat out his attack, and he had stabbed his mother through the back, into her heart. The attack had landed just seconds after, launching the man further into the forest. Naruto immediately raced over to his mother's side, slowly turning her over to inspect the wound. It didn't look good. The blade had indeed came out from the front. Shit, he punched the ground in anger. He didn't know any Iryo ninjutsu to heal her, and Toka's compound was too far away. Watch that mouth, mister. Stuttered Kumiko, lightly scolding her son for his use of foul language. Naruto on the other hand didn't find the situation funny. If he ran to the Senju compound, then maybe she had a chance. Even if he had to serve the clan for years, as long as she was alive. Just as he was about to reach out for her, he felt himself stiffen in place. Something was holding him in place while his mother was slowly being pulled away, dragging on the ground, a bloody trail following her. He couldn't see what was dragging her, but he knew the hooded man was responsible. And there he was once more, standing over her body, as she bled out. He was trying with all of his will to move his body, but nothing was working. "Please," he prayed, hoping he could do something. He suddenly felt something burst from his torso and make impact. Looking down, he was in awe and horror. Chains were sticking out of him. He followed them and his eyes widened. They were wrapped around the hooded man. He still couldn't move, but the chains on him could, and mentally had them tighten around the man. That was when he felt whatever was holding him in place drop. He rushed forward, kneading his chakra, giving it shape and form, concentration on his face. He inhaled. Futon. Shinkagyoku, vacuum spheres. He exhaled small blasts of wind chakra, all of them piercing the man he had chained up, blowing him away once more, and he once more was at her side. "Don't worry, I'll take you Arg." He felt a searing pain on his back, burning his flesh. Reaching to his back and removing whatever it was, he noticed it was a small grain of something. He quickly turned around. "How?" he muttered. "How are you still alive?" The man he was so sure he had killed was behind him. "Hey, wrong person." Naruto's eyes widened in horror. The man from before had not been alone. His body locked up once more, and it was with dreadful realization that the man in front of him now was the one who was able to immobilize him, not the other one. Naruto couldn't turn around, but his heart ached when he heard his mother crying softly. "Are we almost done here?" asked the man in front of him. Who is he talking to? Nearly. Naruto froze. The man he had just seen being pierced by wind balls was still alive. The situation was grim. His mother also realized this. "Naruto," she called out to him. "As long as you live, then I can go in peace." Even in pain, she could tell when someone wanted to kill. These two did not want to kill her son, yet. "I'll finally be with your father again." The blonde Namikaze started to tear up at her admission. I don't want you to go. I don't want to be alone. The two hooded men were silently watching, wanting to see how this played out before making their move. You're never alone. We'll always be watching over you. And soon, you'll find someone to love. He wished he could turn around to face her as he said this. I love you, Mom. I love you too, so. The hooded man behind Kumiko had cut her off. That was getting a little too mushy for me. He smirked. He had purposely let them speak so he could crush his target, Spirit. Naruto was numb, he couldn't feel anything at the moment. His mother's last words had been cut short, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw something rolling past him. Tears streamed down his face freely as he let out a loud cry, his chakra leaking out of his body. Impressive, complimented the man holding him in place. The output was indeed impressive, and it would have drawn others to investigate had they not set up their own defenses. He and his mother may have had a chance had they not. Indeed, but he can still go much higher. He doesn't know it, but he can, replied the killer of his mother. Unfortunately, it was not enough to stop us. With this, our plan is set in motion. Both of them nodded and both attacked him. One of them struck his neck, his apple, with their elbow, while the other kneed his head, knocking him unconscious. The one who had been holding him had a crazed grin on his face. I'll be seeing you later, he said in a sing-song voice, then vanishing. Get stronger, was all the hooded man said. He had plans for the boy, and he couldn't get them accomplished with the boy so weak. Hours later, his eyes snapped open and he leapt to his feet, ready to attack. Sending out a small pulse, he could feel no one within a few miles of his home. Looking over to the body of his mother and almost lost himself once more. He stood strong. Gathering up her body, he buried her next to his father, and said a small prayer for them. Seeing his former home in the state it was in made him come to a conclusion. There was nothing left for him here. So he grabbed all of his gear, scrolls, and anything else of importance and sealed it away. Only thing was, he didn't know where to go. This was his first time without his parents, and now he was out in the world. He took a deep breath. The first thing he needed to do was find shelter. He would go from there. He already had a place in mind. The following night, Senju compound. It had taken him a while to locate the compound, and even longer to hide his chakra from other potential sensors. He was not naive enough to not believe there were not others, as Madara had shown him. Getting into the compound was a much easier task for him. These bigger clans had much more space to cover and weren't always doing it, plus the arrogance they exuded helped. They truly believed no one could infiltrate their borders. He did run into one problem though, he didn't know where Toka lived. He must have the devil's luck cause he just caught sight of her and started to follow her, his camouflage technique still in place. Every step she took, he noted, she shifted her body weight to emit little to no sound while looking regal while doing it. It really didn't come as a surprise to him, considering she was basically the princess of the Senju clan. Finally seeing which home she was heading to, he moved ahead of her, entering from a window. He looked around the place. It was small. One bed, bathroom, small kitchen, and living space. It was built for one person. She really wanted out from their shadows. Enough to move out from her original house. He cut his musings short as she entered, her back to him as he placed himself in the darkest corner. He jumped down and silently placed his hand over her mouth, preventing her from screaming. He was about to inform her he was not an attacker while simultaneously revealing himself when he felt a pain between his legs. He slumped down to the ground on his knees, holding himself. Toka drew two kunai out and was ready to stab her attacker to death, but before she could, she noticed the tuft of blonde hair and the one person it belonged to. Naruto. Oh, sorry about that, Naruto. She didn't sound sorry, but who could blame her? She was just defending herself. He was still slumped over. You startled me. Now she was defending her actions. Who comes into a woman's house at night, under the cover of darkness? Still no response. Toka sighed. Did I really kick you that hard? She heard him grunt, but upon closer inspection realized he was crying. Okay, she said, exasperated. I'm sorry, it was all reflex. He killed her. He mumbled. He killed my mother. Toka was confused. I don't follow? Naruto didn't know why, but he let it all out and she listened. Perhaps he just needed someone to listen to him, like he had done for her the previous day. He explained all that had happened to him, his mother's death, not being able to do anything to stop it. The dam holding his emotions in check had broken. Toka cried alongside him, even though she didn't know either of his parents. It was always hard to lose one, especially if you loved them. She knew from experience. Her own mother died early on in her life and she had been devastated. It hadn't been the same without her. Her father hadn't been as caring after she died, focusing some time on her, but mostly on her elder brothers. They held each other for a few minutes, and eventually moved to her bed. They held each other in their arms, both falling asleep. Following morning, eyes fluttered open and both Naruto and Toka groaned as sunlight hit their eyes. Both of them woke up feeling drained mentally after their rough night. Neither had shed tears like that in a while. They both had the decency to blush, realizing they had slept in the same bed. Naruto got up and started to check himself over. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving," he answered. "It was nice sharing an embrace with you, but I need to go and kill my mother's killers." Toka could see the determination in his eyes and bit her lip. "I'm going with you." Her sudden announcement startled him. "Why would you want to do that?" "I already explained, I need to get out from my brother's shadows. What better way to do that than by making a name for myself out there?" She explained her plan. "Plus, somebody needs to watch over you," she said, mirth in her eyes. Naruto blushed a bit, scratching the back of his head. "Well, okay. Gather your equipment and we'll leave in a few hours." They didn't dare risk trying to leave during the day and would wait for nightfall. Both Naruto and Toka had left the immediate vicinity of the compound at breakneck speed, and were now stopping to catch their breath. Toka looked out in front of her. "You know," she started, getting his attention. "A few more miles and it will be the furthest I've ever been away from home." "Having second thoughts?" she scoffed. "No, I'm not. I'm not a weak-willed woman to have such things. I'm just stating how I'm closing one chapter of my life and heading into a newer one." She saw him nod at her, and she began to look him up and down. "Like something you see," he teased, getting her to blush. He laughed out loud. Now she was scowling at him. No, she was scowling, but it was diminished by her pink cheeks, making it look like she was pouting cutely. "I was just going to ask if you had some armor or something for protection." "Nope," she sighed. "You know it's dangerous out there," she said, handing him something. "Take this." It was a scroll. Wondering what she had given him, he opened the scroll to find a spare armor set. She waited while he placed the pieces on, even helping him place them in the right places. He was ready. "Let's get going." "Let's," she agreed, and so both took off towards the rising sun. One trying to find his mother's killers, the other trying to make a name for herself.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.